This is a Real Investors event. You guys hear me okay? Yeah? Okay. We start with a prayer. Please join with me. Dear Lord, we thank you so much for your wonderful hand upon us. We just ask for your continued hands on this country and our leadership. And we ask for your continued hands on us as we grow our businesses, and we would continue to be a reflection of you in all that we do. In Jesus' name. So real quick, let me go ahead and show my screen. And welcome back to 21 Days to Real Estate Riches. First thing I want to do is just again remind everybody you should have gotten a packet for the second week, which is what we're in now. Quick reminder, tomorrow is just a catch-up week. Catch-up day, excuse me, catch-up week. There's no lesson planned for tomorrow. There's no slides planned for tomorrow. I'm just basically going to have open office hours starting at 7 p.m. and we'll go as long as we need to. And that's your opportunity to come in and ask me questions about anything we covered in the following 2 weeks that still might not be perfectly clear, okay? So that's what we're doing tomorrow. Real quick, I want to take a quick look at our homework and see where folks are. I didn't see a lot of people submit homework yesterday, so I don't know if it's because folks were stuck. I don't know if it's because I didn't do a very good job, but again, you know, we're posting homework. Okay, some of you guys are posting stuff outside of the homework, so please don't do that. Okay, here we go. Here's your MAR contract for sale. Can you please put a clean copy of the contract and the addendum in the files? So I don't think I fully understand the question. Everybody got a copy of the contract and the addendum yesterday and the day before as a part of the email. So please go back and look at the email.
Sherman, that was me. I went back and it says educational purposes only on the documents.
Yes, they're always going to say educational purposes only. Is that what you meant? I'm sorry.
Right, that's what I meant.
Yes, it's going to say educational purposes because until you sign the buyer broker agreement and I'm having a private session with you, I'm not going to give you anything other than an academic copy because it's for educational purposes right now.
Oh, okay. All right.
If I am not your broker and I am not your agent and I'm not your attorney, that can only leave one thing. Right now, I am your teacher. And if I am your teacher, then I'm going to give you a copy that does have a watermark across the front of it that says educational purposes only. And why do you think I did that?
So they won't copy.
Yeah, and you won't use it.
Right.
Now, when you sign the buyer broker agreement and we're sitting down having a one-on-one session because I'm your broker or I'm your agent and we're getting ready to go work together, then yes, I'll absolutely positively give you a clean copy. But
okay.
for the purpose of, and thank you, Donna, for bringing that up. For the purposes of the classroom, all the legal documents I give you are going to say educational purposes only, because I'm doing a training session. I'm not acting as your lawyer or your broker or your attorney. And if I were acting in the capacity of your broker and did have that fiduciary responsibility, then we would talk specifically about which version of the contract we're going to use, which version of the addendum we're going to use, and how we're going to fill out and who's responsible for what. And at that point, absolutely, I'm going to give you a clean copy. No question about it. But for purposes of classroom, I want you guys to use the one I gave you, which does say for educational purposes. It's okay. We're practicing. These are mock exercises, but I'm going to critique them as you upload them. Okay. But thank you, Donna, for helping to explain what the question was. Thank you very much. All right. And I guess Don has the same question. So Don, same question, same answer. Okay. Diane says, where can I get a copy of the Maryland contract, PG addendum, broker's agreement? My copy is one. So, okay, Diane, same question, same answer. So despite the fact that they say educational purposes only, I don't want you guys submitting offers out in the street right now. I don't want you doing that. That's just going to create a train wreck. On top of which, if you actually did submit them, how would I know what you're doing if we haven't sat down together and gone through our agreement in terms of how we're going to work together? So for the purposes of where you guys are in this class, which is we're going to be on this contract issue for at least another day, possibly a third day. For the purpose of this class, just use the one with the watermark in it, okay? Training purposes. All right, just like when you take driver's ed, they don't immediately let you get out on I-95. Not a good thing. We're gonna drive the course with the cones first, and then we're gonna get out there for real. Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments or? Okay, so I will make sure. You know what? I think this is my fault. I forgot to put day 12. That's my fault. So what I will do is just like I've done in prior days, have a day 11 and a day 12, a day 10. I forgot to put a day 12 upload your homework here. So I will do that. And then as you guys start filling out these contracts in a mock basis, please upload them to where it says day 12 homework. And then I'm also going to give you guys a chance today to upload if you guys want to continue to upload. So there'll be a day 13 also. Okay. All right. Well, that explains what's going on. Sherman messed up. He got tired, went to bed, and forgot to get back up early and deal with it. All right. We'll fix that. All right. So hopefully that answers everybody's questions. I'll stop sharing that screen. I will start sharing this screen. So there will be something that says day 12 and day 13 homework. Please fill out your contracts. They will have the watermark on them. Don't worry about it. Fill them out as best you can. Do the best you can in filling them out by hand. Again, as I said before, I really, really, really want you guys to get the hang of filling these things out with a black Sharpie marker. My feeling is if you're filling it out by hand, you're reading it. And that's the most important thing, is that you're actually reading and getting to know what's in that document. It doesn't really change that much from year to year. Every year they issue a new MAR contract and a new PG Carr contract, like in October, November, and it might have one new paragraph or one new word. That's it, you know. But it doesn't really change that much, and it won't change at all during the course of a year. So as you are working with your agent, as you're working with your Diamond member coach, just make sure that they're giving the latest version of the contract. And if there's any questions about any changes to the contract from a prior year, sit down with them and say, hey, you know, tell me what's new in this contract. They know what's new in the contract. They have to know what's new in the contract. That's part of having a license. And they should be the ones, quite frankly, who are not only giving you the contract, but also telling you what particular technique or strategy they want. Do they want you to say on the first page of the contract, the name of your LLC and or a to be formed LLC, like I talked about in the old version of the 21-day course, or would they rather see you put that in the addendum, the general addendum that gets attached at the back? That's the kind of conversation you will have with your Diamond member coach and or your agent, depending upon who you choose to use to help you make that happen. Okay. All right. So with that,
Sherman?
Yes.
Question for you regarding the brokerage agreement forms.
Yes, ma'am.
I know you mentioned a few days ago you want to go over it, but for the purpose of sending it over to you, can you just highlight or just explain rather section 13 that
Sure.
addresses addenda? I just want to be clear.
Do me a favor, Kennedy. Am I saying that right, by the way, Kennedy? Kennedy, I'm sorry. Kennedy, do me a favor. Do you mind coming tomorrow? Let's go through that step by step tomorrow.
Okay, no problem.
Because I did do that the other day, and I'm more than happy to do it during the office hours. And since we're so close to office hours, let's do that, because I got a pretty full agenda for you guys today. And
okay.
Truthfully, it won't make a difference whether you send me the buyer broker agreement tonight, tomorrow, or Monday, or the following. Excuse me. Okay. But yeah, let's do that. Let's go through that first thing tomorrow when we get together tomorrow. Okay.
All
right. Any other comments about what we've done so far? Again, today's not the review day or the office hours day, but I will take one or two more comments about anything we've covered yesterday or the day before if it's something that's really eating at you, especially if it pertains to the contract, because I really do want you guys writing up these contracts for practice and doing it the best you can. You know, it's 11 pages plus 1 page addendum. If 1 page stumps you, then just do the best you can. But by filling it out and submitting it, I can take a look at it and see where there may be issues. And maybe it was an issue because I didn't do as great a job in teaching that day, and I need to go back and clean something up. Or maybe, like, you know, you just didn't hear something I said. That's okay. I mean, that's why we do this, to make sure that everybody's where they need to be before we actually flip the switch and do this for real. Okay. All right. So anybody else? All right, so I'm going to stop sharing screen so I can let a couple more people in. And I'm going to mute everybody now. So do me a favor, any questions you may have from here on out, put it in the chat box, because I'm going to show you guys a bunch of videos tonight. And I want to make sure we don't have any background noise on the videos. If you are having any issues whatsoever, because I'm going to put everybody on mute, but with this type of meeting that we have, you can unmute yourself. If you have any problems whatsoever of keeping your phone muted, then I would kindly ask you to exit the Zoom and just watch what we're doing on Facebook. It is streaming live to the Facebook group. I made sure before I let you guys in that the Facebook group was set up properly. So it's really kind of important, because I'm going to be showing you guys about 8 videos today. It's kind of important that we don't have a whole lot of audio distractions, because it's going to make it miserable. And if I get like through a 9-minute video and somebody pops in, I don't have the ability to like back it up like a TV remote control. I have to go all the way back to the beginning. And nobody wants to watch a 9-minute video today twice. Okay, can I get a thumbs up from everybody? Okay, so I'm putting you on mute now. Please keep yourselves muted. If that's an issue, go to the Facebook group. I mean, go to the Facebook group and watch it in Facebook, because that doesn't interrupt us. Okay, all right, so got that there. Let me just check the chat real quick. So same kind of questions about the watermark. Exclusive agreement, you can submit the exclusive agreement by either faxing it to the office, and I think the fax number was provided, but if not, I'll give it to you again, 301-218-4337, 301-218-4337, or you can email it to broker@Realinvestors, broker@Realinvestors, or you can fax it. Yeah, well, I gave you the fax number, sorry, I gave you the fax number. So those are really kind of the 2 ways to do it: broker@Realinvestors, or the fax number. Either one will get it where it needs to be. Okay. And again, there's no fee, and so you don't have to like put in money or wait. I mean, if you know you're ready to go now, just go ahead and get it over. And then Karen, who's our brokerage assistant, will grab it. If she has any questions or there's something that hasn't been done correctly, she'll call you back and help you fix it. And then she'll hand it over to me and say, okay, we have somebody who needs a diamond member coach. And then I'll circle back to you, and we'll at least have a 15-20-minute conversation about what you're looking to do. And that way I can make sure I assign the best person as your coach. Okay. All right. I'm excited. I'm excited for you guys too. Yeah, baby. Frank says, I couldn't find it. Frank, I don't know what you couldn't find. So if you can't find it, please type in the chat box. Let me know. I want to make sure you get what you need. Dee says, I've answered your question. Great. Hey, Sherman, I had a couple of missed assignments. I'm catching up, as I just said. Oh, okay. Cool. Glad you're back. Thank you. And the best way to quite frankly, the best way to catch up is to go to the Facebook group and watch the recordings of the prior day sessions. And then, of course, come tomorrow for our second open office hours, and it's free form. It's like whatever you need, and quite frankly, even stuff I haven't covered yet. But if it's something I haven't covered yet and I'm gonna cover it in the following week, I'll kind of say, hey, hold that question until 2 days from now, because I am gonna cover it in 2 days. Okay. But otherwise, yeah, just it's free form, open mic, whatever you need, we'll take care of it. Okay. Section 18, we should list the addendum. I'm not sure what that means, Mark, so help me out there. Everybody should have gotten 3 documents. The exclusive buyer broker / buyer tenant agreement, it's the one and the same. If you're hiring Realinvestors to be your buyer's broker, or if you're hiring Realinvestors to represent you as a tenant to go rent a property, it's the same document. Those folks who want to work with Realinvestors and have Realinvestors work with you, when we get to the implementation phase, which is really Monday, go ahead and fill out the buyer broker agreement and get it over to me, and we'll get you on board with either myself or another, more than likely a diamond member coach. If you want to work with another brokerage firm, that's certainly your prerogative. They're going to ask you to sign the same thing. So if you want to have, if you want me to answer questions about it tomorrow, so you know what you're going to get yourself in for, what you should expect, should you choose to use another brokerage firm, we can talk about that tomorrow during the open office hours, or go back and review the video. I think it was 2 days ago, which would have been day 11, where I went over the document. Okay, so that you get a buyer broker agreement, contract, which we did yesterday. And again, go through it. And I apologize because we did have some interruptions early on in the training. So you're just going to have to like get past that first 15 minutes. But it's uploaded. It was recorded live to the Facebook group. So it's there. That's day 12. And then the other agreement is the addendum, which gets attached to the contract and then becomes a part of the contract, provided everybody signs off on it. If you send the addendum and the seller side doesn't sign off on it, then the addendum's not a part of the contract. If they sign the contract, but they don't sign the addendum's not a part of it. So you got to kind of make sure that they sign that document too. And as you guys recall, yesterday I said, you really want the stuff on the addendum to be very vanilla. Do not handwrite out on the addendum. If you've got a PDF editor, PDF, and my favorite font, because it looks like it's just standard language, is Helvetica. Helvetica neutral, no bold, no italicized. You do not want to bring attention to the things you put on the addendum. You want it to look like it's just kind of matter of fact. Everything else you want to fill out by hand. So I went over yesterday, day 12, how to fill out the addenda, what 3 things you need on the addenda, what must always be on the addenda, which of course is your one and only weasel clause. And then of course the language that allows you to create a new LLC for the purpose of taking title. And then if there is somebody on the team or you are licensed, you want to put that 3rd bullet in there about one or more parties to the LLC as a licensed real estate professional. And that satisfies the disclosure, okay? In the contract, do we need to list the addenda in section 18? Well, I'll tell you what, Mark, since you're asking, let me go back and see. So let me go back to yesterday's slides and we'll go back to section 18. Yes, thank you for bringing that to my attention. You should, if you don't, you're going to be okay. That's me talking from my contracts class. But you should mark that you have used an addenda. So the addenda we were using was the PG Carr addenda. Now remember, the contract that we used as a model is MAR. So the contract is the Maryland Association of Realtors. Well, the Maryland Association of Realtors does not have a general addenda. In other words, that addenda is sort of a blank piece of paper and you can put whatever you want. MAR doesn't like that. Maryland Association of Realtors wants to have a specific addenda for specific things. They don't like this sort of generic write in whatever you want and everybody signs it. They hate that. So they don't have a general addenda, but PG Carr, Prince George's County Association of Realtors does. G Carr, the Greater Capital Area Association of Realtors, which is the combination of DC and Montgomery County. I'm not as well versed in Anne Arundel, and I'm not as well versed in other counties throughout the state because I don't do enough business there to be able to tell you this from memory. I suppose I could get my hands on it, pull it up, because I can get my hands on all the contracts and all the addenda. I'm pretty sure the Greater Baltimore, so Greater Baltimore is Baltimore City and Baltimore County. I'm pretty sure they also use a general addenda. But MAR doesn't use that general addenda. So therefore, in section 18, there is no box. Sorry, that's 13. In section 18, there is no box for general addenda. So what you would have to do is mark right here, X marks the spot. You would have to say X right here under other addenda.
Hey, can you show our screen? Sorry, show your screen. Sorry for interrupting, but
No problem. I didn't realize I wasn't, so thank you for asking. I'm doing all this bouncing around and y'all like, I don't see what the heck the man's talking about. Can you guys see okay now? Give me a thumbs up. Yes? Okay. So what Mark was asking me about was the section 18 of the contract where it has all these check boxes for all these addenda. And as I was saying, and let me just go ahead and be redundant a little bit, let me backtrack a little bit. The contract that I shared with you is the one that's going to be most commonly used when you're going to go after Maryland properties. If you were in Virginia, you would use either Virginia Association or Northern Virginia Association. If you're in DC, you would either use DC Board of Realtors or GCAR. But in Maryland, because you have the choice of using the County Association of Realtors or the State Association of Realtors, most real estate agents are going to use the MAR contract, the Maryland Association of Realtors contract. That's what this is. That's what I gave you guys for educational purposes only. That's what we're playing around with, because that's the most commonly used one that you're going to wind up using if you're going after Maryland deals. If you happen to go through this training and you're not in Maryland, don't get yourself all tied up in a pretzel. You know, whatever state you're in, Georgia, Texas, whatever, there will be a state association of realtors and they will have their state contract. Now, in Maryland, and I can't speak to Virginia because I don't do enough to have used the VAR contract, Virginia Association of Realtors contract, to know. DC, I never really did belong to the DC Association of Realtors. I always picked GCAR because GCAR is the combination of DC and Montgomery County. But I do know this for a fact in Maryland. Maryland does not like seeing that general addendum. If you guys recall, and I'm bouncing around a little bit, this is what the general addenda looks like. Let me delete that for a second. This is what the general addenda looks like in Maryland for PG Carr. It's literally a blank piece of paper, and you can put whatever you want on there. Well, Maryland Association of Realtors hates that. They do not want to see blank, because now they're afraid that real estate agents might be trying to practice law. So what most real estate agents will do is they will take that blank piece of paper, hand it to the client and say, here, write whatever you want, and I'll give it to the other side. That's in the traditional role of buying, selling real estate because you're going to move into a house. Well, we're not doing the traditional thing, right? Remember what I said? We're not doing a traditional, we're hacking the matrix. So rather than having a blank piece of paper, we're going to type in using some kind of PDF editor, or if you don't have a PDF editor, maybe you're using a typewriter, or you can type it in Word and do a quick cut and paste, you know, and paste it into the middle. But we're going to use the PG Carr Association, Prince George's County Association of Realtors general addendum, because it gives us that flexibility to have that white space and put certain specific things in. What specific things we're going to put in? The things I went over yesterday, which talk about these three things. That the contract is subject to the approval of the hard money lender, because that's your one and only weasel clause. That upon ratification of the agreement between the parties, the buyer shall have the right to form a new Maryland LLC for the sole purpose of taking title. That gives you the ability to form a new LLC. And of course, one or more members of the buyer's LLC is a licensed real estate professional. And that only applies, that's only germane if in fact you're a real estate agent, or somebody on the team's a real estate agent, or one of your partners a real estate agent. One of the things I failed to mention yesterday, I need to cover it today. I said use Helvetica and make it look like it's just, you know, boilerplate. Do not make it bold. I think I only made this bold for your guys' benefit, right? This bold font, I made it bold for the benefit of teaching purposes. You guys, when you type it in, when you use either your PDF editor or you type it into Word and literally cut and paste it in, use a non-bold. Use like Helvetica, and don't make it, you want it to look like it's just the standard way that people should do stuff. Don't bring attention to itself, okay? So don't handwrite it and don't make it bold. I just made it bold for the purpose of teaching you guys, okay? All right, so Mark's question was, hey, in the MAR contract, section 18, we got all these little check boxes for the addenda. And yes, you should check the box anytime there's an addenda attached to the contract, but there's no check box for the general addenda. Well, the reason why there's no check box for the general addenda is because the general addenda is coming from the State Association of Realtors, and MAR doesn't have that sort of one-page blank page because they don't like that. They actually have separate addenda for each one of these things, okay? And none of these addenda that they have for each one of these things is applicable for what we need. So that's why we're using the MAR contract. So therefore, we would want to put in, I'm sorry, not the MAR, that's why we're using the PG Carr. We would want to put in attached general addendum number 1. And again, use a simple font, a Helvetica font, simply typed out, matches the same color, make it black, don't make it bold. And for goodness sake, don't blow it up. 12 point. And put it right there, okay? Doesn't that look like it's just a part of the agreement? There's nothing flashy, it's not, right? Give me a thumbs up if you agree with that, right? So that's how you do that. So thank you, Mark, for bringing that to my attention. That little X should also be just black, right? No fancy colors. Just a little black, and then we're gonna make it a little smaller. Let's make that big. Just a little, because it's just not a big deal. We don't want it to be a big deal, okay? So the contract with the attached addendum, that really becomes your contract. And yes, Mark, again, thank you for bringing it to my attention. It should be in paragraph 18 of the contract. It should either be checked, and the reason why we're not checking any one of these is because we're not using these addendum. We are using the PG Carr addendum, and I wouldn't even put PG Carr, just say attached general addendum number 1, okay? So thank you for bringing that to my attention. All right, any other questions, please put them in the chat box related to the contract and filling out the contract. So yes, Mark, we should list the addendum. Thank you for asking. It was a homework page. Okay, cool. Putting it later in the contract, do we need to list the addenda? So Mark, you asked the same question and I answered the same question. So yes, thank you. And D, no, I was not showing slides. I was just prattling on to myself. So thank you for catching me and forcing me to actually show you the slides. Okay. Can you please go over step 5, estate? Sure. So let's see what estate is. So all of these numbers here, these are the actual paragraphs of the MAR contract. Estate, the property is being conveyed in fee simple. So if it's fee simple, which is what most of them will be, you will put an X for fee simple. And all you got to do is just put an X right there on the spot. That's really all you need. Okay, you're going to handwrite it, right? So therefore, if you're handwriting the body of the contract, it won't look like Helvetica. It'll look more like that. And it'll probably be a little bigger than a 12-point font. And you just put X here. On the other hand, if the property you're going after is subject to an annual ground rent, then you'll put the X over here, and you'll also fill out the amount of the ground rent. And it is typical that you spell it out in words and then put it in dollars, so there's no confusion as to what you're saying. But 99.9% of the properties you're going after, unless you're doing deals in Hagerstown or Baltimore, are in fact going to be fee simple. Okay, that means when you buy it, you get it all, including the dirt. And then of course, with respect to the escrow, it will almost always be a non-interest bearing. Okay, all right. I see day 12 on my screen, but not what you're referencing. It might just be me. Malik, if that's still, okay, so this is, I've gone back to day 12. These are my day 12 slides. So to answer the questions that you guys are having for me, I'm going back to the prior day slides. So yes, it does say day 12. That's not a mistake. I'm now editing the slides that I went over yesterday because I missed a couple of things when I was teaching it yesterday. See what happens if you interrupt me? I forget stuff, and then it's really bad. Is it me? When looking through the MLS, I don't see a lot of distressed properties, ugly houses, under 320,000. I see more renovated, ready to move in. So you're not going to see quote unquote ugly houses as a general description. What you will see as you go through the MLS over time, and that's probably what you're seeing now, Sheila, is that the flow of bank REO ebbs and flows. And most bankers have a huge push, which means they put a lot of pressure on their asset managers. Banks don't actually sell REO. They turn it over to what's called an asset manager and then give the asset manager the standard operating procedure or the guidelines for selling the property. Most banks want to have all the REO off their books at the end of the year. They just want it gone. They don't want to have to wrestle with the regulators as to why do they still have that REO in the file or on the books. So it is not uncommon to see a lot of REO get blown out either at the end of the year or end of the quarter, and then the start of a new quarter or the start of a new year, there's not much inventory. So that's not an uncommon occurrence at all. In addition to which, you have what's called the quote unquote spring buying season. It's not uncommon to see properties not really start to hit the market until February, March, and then spring buying season is kind of traditionally March, April, all the way through to June, July. And then there's typically a lull in the summertime, and then it picks back up in September, and then it kind of goes to bed around December. So it's not uncommon to see this sort of ebbs and flows of properties hitting the market. That's not uncommon at all. Okay. So is now a good time for training? It's always a good time for training. It's always a good time for training at Real Investors. Yes, give me a thumbs up. If you're an investor, there's no bad time to be in the market, and there's no better or worse time to be in the market. If you are a real estate agent, then you have to be sensitive to sort of the quote unquote buying season. But my philosophy is anytime's a good time to be learning how to do what we're talking about, but it's not uncommon if you're doing what we're talking about, hacking the matrix, it's not uncommon for this part of the business to see that ebb and flow. So what would happen is you want to get this part of your business up, running on autopilot. And when this part of the business seems to be quote unquote slowing down a little bit, or you're not getting as much opportunity or as many deals as you want to have because of that ebb and flow, then you just simply shift to phase two. And you just refocus your time and attention on the FSBO side of the business. And when this business is kind of hot and heavy, and your team is overwhelmed and they need another pair of hands, you sort of like flow back in here and go, okay, I know what you guys are doing, because before I automated it, I was doing it all myself. Let me give you guys a spare pair of hands, and let me roll up my sleeves and help you guys on this phase one stuff and come back into it. So there's always going to be sort of like the rolling of the ocean, sort of this back and forth. But I wouldn't let any of it throw me as an investor, because, as we said yesterday and the day before, somebody who puts a property in the MLS, and this is quite frankly, I think what Robert Eugene was trying to say, and I was pulling my hair out because of all the interruptions yesterday, and I should have pulled my hair out because I think this is what he was trying to say, which is you may go after some deals that are in the MLS, and by cataloging and keeping track of what you went after, 30 days later, you may find out that the person who didn't respond to you at all still has a property available, and you make an offer 30 days later or 60 days later or 90 days later, and all of a sudden somebody who didn't want to talk to you, somebody who threw your offer in the trash can previously, now says, you know what, we haven't had many bites, nothing's going on, let me just go ahead and respond to this guy's offer and see if we can make a deal. And I think, okay, thank you. Robert's like, yes, that's exactly what I was saying yesterday. And you were correct. You were absolutely correct. And so my response yesterday was a little inappropriate, but I was a little ticked off and a little peeved, and I wasn't thinking straight. Because we had so many interruptions. Oh my God, like learning how to write up a contract is hard enough without somebody like interrupting you every 30 seconds. So we fixed that, we solved that. But yes, you are correct. One of the reasons, Robbie, you're very correct. One of the reasons why we track all of the offers that go out the door, whether the person responded or not, is because we want to be able to see 30 days later, 60 days later, 90 days later, hey, is that deal still out there? And if it is, we want to make another offer on it. Now, you guys are new to the game, but as you get going, one of the things that I do, and it's funny, I just had this conversation in one of my private VIP sessions. Maybe David will give me permission to sort of share that VIP session we had 2 days ago, at least that little segment, just that little segment, Dave. But we had this exact conversation 2 days ago when I was doing a private coaching session, where I said the other reason for capturing the offers that you submitted, even if you didn't get a response, is because you may find a period of time that there's no new properties hitting the market, and you're a little frustrated because, like, gee, there's nothing hitting the market right now. That happens. Well, if you have a catalog of properties that you submitted offers on before, even if you never heard anything back, even if your original offer went in the trash can, you can literally sit there one night at 6 o'clock on a Sunday night and flip through your catalog. I like to put my offers out there, whether I send them electronically, fax them, whatever. And of course, faxing is becoming less and less frequent. But what I used to do when I was doing this like full time is I would write up the offers by hand. And I always love writing the offers by hand. Even when I was putting 100 offers in the street at one time, well, I never did it one time, but like 20, I think the max I ever did was like 25 offers at one time. And then another day later, 25, and another day took it off, and another day 20. So I sort of got like 100 offers out in 1 week. Even when I was doing that, I still wrote them out by hand. You know, once you kind of get into flow and you're doing it yourself, this is before I automated it, there's just something about writing stuff out by hand. You just get in the flow. It just works, right? Now, of course, today we got DocuSign and PDF editors and all that kind of stuff and handwritten fonts. I get it. But what I would do is send the offers out and then take a copy of the offer, or take the offer. It wasn't a copy, it was the offer. And I'd 3-hole punch it and put it in a binder. And I'd have a 4-inch binder, and I would have month separators so that I could typically capture about 3 to 4 months worth of offers I had submitted. And then when the market would get a little slow, I would just go back as far as I possibly could and say, gee, I wonder what happened with this offer. And if one offer was ignored, rejected, whatever, and I go into the MLS and see, hey, that one closed. I wonder what it closed for. And then Howard taught me the technique, but that was many years later, of actually going out in the field once a deal that you lost closes and go see if you can go find the contractor, because that's a great way to pick up new contractors. But what I would typically find out is that some of the deals I bid on, they were still in the market. They were still available. They were still being offered for sale 2 months later, 3 months later, right? So if you've got a whole catalog, let's say you're putting 100 offers out in the street every month, right? If you do 5 a day, that's roughly 25 to 30 a week, times 4 weeks, that's roughly about 100 to 120 offers, right? If you get 120 offers this month, and 120 offers next month, and 120 offers next month, that's 3 months worth, and only 3% are responding, that's 300 offers and 9 invitations for highest and best. 9. That means there's 291 offers that you never heard anything on. Well, if you get into a slow period because there's no new properties coming to the market, guess what? You got 291 possible listings that might still be available that you could go through and write up offers again. And you know, do a little homework, do a little research. You're going to be a little bit smarter than you were when you first put it out there. Put that into the calculus and get those offers out the door. So if the market's slow, you still have a place to go. Now, we get to the part where you're automating it and you got somebody who's doing it for you. You just say, hey, I want you to go back and rewrite offers on these 30, 40, 50 properties because I went through and saw that they're still available. Or better yet, you're busy. Hey, I want you to go back and find out if these properties are still available. And if they are still available, let's rewrite offers. Some you may find out, hey, property went under contract. Somebody beat you out and it went under contract, but it went under contract 2 months ago, 3 months ago, and it still hasn't closed. Well, maybe they took an offer that was higher, but the offer's not closing. Then maybe you could come back in through your agent and say, hey, your diamond member coach, hey, how about reaching out to this agent and see if they're taking any backup offers? And then you resubmit as a backup offer. So again, you are creating your own opportunity when you're actually getting offers out the door every day to the tune of, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 offers a day. If you're capturing that information by either making a copy of the offer or the offer itself and putting it in a 3-ring binder, or if you're sort of like a paperless office and you're tracking that on some kind of a tracking sheet, like maybe a spreadsheet, then you can go back and say, hey, what was the offer I made? And is that property still available? And make a new offer on a property you made an offer on 30, 60, 90 days ago. And even if the market dries up like it can do, and it's totally slow, there's nothing new happening, you still have a catalog of listings that you can make offers on and just start the whole process all over again. And again, I'm not one to quote Ron LeGrand too much, but I think he was correct on this. And I think I quoted him on this same statement a couple of days ago. Time and circumstance changes everything. If somebody's got a property that's been listed for sale and it's been out there for 2-3 months and they're suddenly realizing they're not going to get their price, And then all of a sudden the IRS hits them with, oh, by the way, you owe $30,000 in taxes from last year, or the state hits them, or something happens to one of their children, or something happens to them. They got to come up with a quick $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. And like the fastest way to come up with that kind of money is just sell the property. Guess what? If you're resubmitting offers 10, 20, 30, 60, 90 days later, all of a sudden where your offer went in the trash can a month ago or 2 months ago, 3 months ago, now all of a sudden they're paying some serious attention to it. Okay, you're creating your own opportunities by cataloging and keeping a record of an archive of the previous offers that you made. Okay, all right. See, we're having a good discussion about homework. We're going to get there. We just want to do it this way, not the other way. Under paragraph 7, section B, should rewrite to be paid at settlement. I know there was a bit of back and forth yesterday. So 7. Okay, so this is the mistake I made yesterday. So let me fix it again. There's only one deposit, okay? And that deposit is $1,000 on the kind of deals that we're making offers on. Section B, there will not be an additional deposit. I know I said that yesterday. I was wrong when I said that at the beginning, and hopefully I cleaned it up yesterday, and hopefully I'm cleaning it up again now. There is no second deposit on the deals right now. In some cases, but again, you don't want to do this because it only disadvantages you. Sometimes if somebody's making an offer on a property that's, let's say a $500,000 property, and your buyer agent specializes in those kind of properties, says, listen, $1,000 earnest money deposit is not going to cut it. You really need to offer them $5,000, and you've already got a $1,000 earnest money deposit check in their hand, and you're ready to make an offer. Then sometimes you're like, okay, we'll put $1,000 now, and 15 days from now we'll put up another $4,000. Okay. That's what this is for. And when I said yesterday, it's the difference between your purchase price, I was wrong. And then I realized it as we got down to paragraph 20, when it talks about what happens to the deposit if you default. And all of a sudden I realized, oh my gosh, I'm telling these folks the wrong thing, because deposit has a strict definition in the contract. Whatever you put here and whatever you put here is the deposit. And if you default on the contract, that's what you owe. Well, you sure enough don't want to put the whole purchase price in the deposit. So I blew that when I said that initially, but then I cleaned it up yesterday and I'm cleaning it up again now. For the most part, we're just going to have one deposit. For the most part, that deposit's $1,000. That's it. And it gets deposited at the time of offer. So you see what it says? Now, so what should I have done that I didn't do? Let's do this. It should say 1,000, and 00, 100, 00, 100, right? So it's 1,000 in the amount of 1,000, right? And then 1,000, again, just for clarification purposes, dollars at the time of offer. That's it. You're only going to offer them $1,000. In additional deposit, there is no additional deposit. There is no, that's it. That's all you're offering. If you screw this thing up royally, don't listen to me, don't listen to your diamond member coach, totally blow it, that 1,000 becomes liquidated damages. That's what it describes in paragraph 20. And therefore, your only exposure, if you totally blow it, is you lose $1,000. But if in your addendum, and they accept the addendum, and it says subject to the approval of hard money lender, and you never put a time period on hard money lender, then guess what? You just get a letter from your hard money lender saying, I'm not approving the deal. In which case your $1,000 comes back to you, especially since it never left your broker's hands in the first place, assuming it never left your broker's hands in the first place. If it does leave your broker's hands in the first place, you're going to have an argument on your hands. You're going to lose $1,000. It happens every time. Once the money leaves friendly hands, never expect to see it back. Somebody's saying, is the screen black? Are you guys actually seeing this day 12 key to hacking the matrix and the $1,000 I just typed in? Give me a thumbs up. Okay. So if you're seeing a black screen, that's you. So I don't know what you need to do. If you're on a computer, I guess you're okay. Maybe just hit refresh or something. Well, no, actually, no, don't do that on Zoom because it might kick you out. Okay. Can you talk about 16? Sure. You guys are asking me good questions, and I'm gonna give you the best answers I can. So 16. 16, okay. Can I talk about 16, which is lead paint, 16B. What 16B says is that if you are renovating the property, according to an EPA guideline that was effective April 22nd, 2010, if you're renovating the property and the property was built before 1978, you have to have a contractor who will comply with all EPA requirements. Most contractors today have taken classes and are certified in how to properly dispose of lead-based paint materials. So in other words, if they got to replace a window, if they got to tear out a wall, and that wall has lead-based paint in it, they know how to properly dispose of it. And there's certain things they have to do to properly dispose of materials that are coming out of a building that have lead paint. Now, again, if the property was built after 1978, lead paint's not going to be an issue. But what 16B is specifically saying is you acknowledge that when you buy your property, that you're going to have a contractor who will follow these guidelines, and you're just simply acknowledging that somebody told you, hey, look, when you buy the property, you got to make sure that you comply with the EPA regs. Again, EPA regs do not apply to properties built after 1978. And then, of course, there's a link on the EPA website, www.epa.gov/lead renovation, blah, 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 where you can actually get this specific guideline. But all you are doing is acknowledging that should you be the buyer, now, of course, we're not talking about buying properties, are we? Are we buying properties, or are we just simply setting it up so that we can wholesale it or assign our LLC, and the end user buyer has to comply with this? So we need to know and acknowledge that they told us this, but the truth of the matter is we're not renovating properties, and again, this is only applicable to properties built before 1978. So that's what 16B is all about. Okay. All right. 17. Should it say by way of check? You guys are like really all over me, and you are probably correct. An initial deposit by way of. Boy, y'all caught me today, didn't you? He was sleeping. Thank you. Thank you. That's why we do this. An initial deposit by way of check in the amount of $1,000 at time of offer. That's the proper way to. Thank you. Who said that? Who caught me? Shiva, you caught me. I was snoozing. I was sleeping. I had a band teacher once, college no less. And he was kind of a bit of a, I don't know, piece of work, I guess the best way. And he would make mistakes all the time. And when we would catch him in a mistake, because we were college students who are studying to be teachers, when we would catch him in making a mistake, he'd always, just testing you, just testing you. So I'm just testing you, Shiva. I'm just testing you. But yes, that is the proper way to fill this out. An initial deposit by way of check, or if it's a money order, if you're using, post office money orders, right? Does anybody work at the post office anymore? Just asking for a friend, just asking, right? So check, money order, whatever it is, cashier's check, whatever it is, right? That's what goes there, okay? And again, you guys are handwriting it, so it's always going to be bigger than the actual font when you handwrite it, which is good. So initial deposit by way of check in the amount of $1,000 at the time of offer. That is the appropriate way to fill out 7A. Got it? Okay, thank you. All right, anybody else? All right, any other questions? Put them in the chat box. Any other concerns? Any other correcting the teacher? All right, did we already discuss 6? 6 is purchase price. 6 is pretty straightforward. Now, again, I have it in here correctly. I was just doing it really fast yesterday. And I should probably stop making this excuse, but when I'm teaching something and somebody just does the fingers on the chalkboard thing, in yesterday's case, it was just sort of not muting. It just becomes annoying, and it just sort of throws me off my game. And I should probably not be so honest and tell you guys that, because what I should have told you is you need to spell it out and then write it out. That's the appropriate way. 65,000, and it's always 65,000 and zeros, just like on a check, $100. Okay, so 65,000 goes there, or you can put it here, either way, and then the dollar amount. That is the appropriate way to fill it out. not the way Sherman filled it out yesterday when he was distracted. Okay, so 6, purchase price is $65,000. Put on this line, whatever, right? And then write it out in terms of dollars and cents with the dollar sign. Payment terms: payment of the purchase price should be made by buyer as follows: an initial deposit by way of check in the amount of, spell it out, and then write it out. B is not applicable unless there is another deposit made later, if it's like a split deposit, but we're not doing split deposits because split deposits is confusing and split deposits is not attractive. And we're trying to make this written offer as attractive as possible, with one exception. We want them to get hung up on 6. We want them to get hung up on the price, because if they're hung up on the price, it forces them to come back to our agent and say, can you come up with a higher and best offer? That's what we're looking to do. That's what we're looking to trigger. Everything else, however, in this agreement needs to just look really attractive, you know? And by using a handwritten font, it's like we're going to bring attention to it. And we want to bring attention to it when we go through what's in here because it's so attractive. MJ says, do you delete the word settlement on 7B? You know what? I don't even know. Oh, yes. That was from yesterday's boo-boo. Yes, thank you. Woo! Just getting past the first page. All right, so that's what yours should look like, more or less, right? Purchase price, right? Written and spelled out by way of check or money order, whatever it is, okay? And then buyer's broker. So Diane says screenshot time. Yes, if you guys want to make some screenshots of this, by all means, or just go back and watch the video in the Facebook group. But this is now clean like it's supposed to be. That's what it's supposed to look like. Let me take a look real quick. Yeah, I don't see any other, I don't see any other errors like we had yesterday. So that's what the way it should look. All right. Any other questions you guys want to ask me before I move on to today's lesson? Any other questions? All right, so let's move on to today's lesson. Let me jump back into where we are, which is day 13. And again, this is there. This is not there. I'll post this. I will put a placeholder for people to upload their homework. So anybody who does want to take a stab at doing these contracts, at least one, you know, you don't need to upload 10, 15 but just do it once, one time. And guess what? You also don't need to upload the boilerplate where you're not writing anything. Just give me the pages where you're writing something. Let me just see that you're getting that correctly. And again, not this, but the version that we just did, right? That looks more like that, okay? Things put in the proper place, things spelled out in the proper way, things written out in the proper way, okay? All right, so course outline, we are here, the last part of week 2. Believe it or not, we are going to cover these 4 things tonight. Like, wait a minute, how'd that happen? We spent 2 days on 1, now we're gonna spend 1 day on 4, trust me. Once we get past that contract, everything else is just gonna flow like melted butter on a lobster, okay? So, first thing I wanna talk about is hard money lenders. And I wanna talk about a hard money lender from the perspective of being a wholesaler, not from the perspective of being a rehabber. You know, we all know that, you know, when it comes time to borrow money to start fixing and flipping houses or fixing and rehabbing houses, we're probably going to get money from a hard money lender. But when it comes time to filling out these contracts and submitting these contracts, we got to have something called proof of funds. Proof of funds, otherwise known as POF. And as you guys recall, I said yesterday, there's 3 places where one can go get proof of funds. Does anybody remember what the 3 places were we could go get a proof of funds? What are the 3 techniques we can use? Give me any one or give me all 3. What are the 3 techniques we can use? Please type it in the chat box for creating proof of funds. Okay, hard money lender, yes. IRA, so if we have a retirement account that has a large balance, yes, we can do a snapshot or a screenshot. Yep. Bank, traditional banking relationship. I'll also take a traditional credit union relationship if they're willing to loan, okay? But the problem with IRAs and the problem with banks / credit unions is that they're not going to actually loan money to somebody else. And that takes us to the important lesson of tonight. Generally speaking, when you're making offers, you want to get a proof of funds letter from a hard money lender. You want to get a proof of funds letter from a hard money lender, because I'm about to tell you why the right hard money lender will make you rich. Or as I like to say, why the right hard money lender will make you filthy stinking rich, even if you never borrow a dime. So think about it this way. What is our number one job as wholesalers? What are we doing as wholesalers? Type it in the chat box as best you can in your own words. There's no right or wrong answers. There's no right answers. Tell me what we're doing as wholesalers. Tell me what you think we're doing as wholesalers. Tell me what you think you're doing as a wholesaler. All right? Deals, yes. Finding deals, yes. Anybody got a better answer? Ah, there we go. Selling our position in the property. Yes. Purchasing properties at a discount and wholesaling them for a profit to a buyer. Yes. Assigning contracts to buyers, or said another way, assigning contracts or assigning our ownership in an LLC to buyers, again, for profit, right? Assigning our interests, yes. So here's the deal. You're going to put a property under contract. Well, how am I going to put a property under contract, Sherman? You're going to put those contracts out in the street and let your diamond member coach or your agent negotiate a deal for you and then help you bring that fish in the boat. That's how you're going to get a deal. Now, when you get a deal, the very next step is to assign your interest to a buyer. But in order for that buyer to close so that you can get paid, the buyer has to have what? What's the single most important thing the buyer needs to have once they sign that agreement with you? Type it in the chat box, please. Financing, money, yes. Cash, yes. In other words, you've done all the work. You found the deal. You got your contractor to give you a written cost estimate. You got a title company who's willing to put all the pieces together, and you found yourself a buyer. But the buyer's got to bring cash. You've brought the property. You've brought the contractor. You've brought the title company. The buyer has to bring cash. Otherwise, the deal falls apart. Does everybody understand that? If you understand that, put I understand or give me a thumbs up. You understand what I just said, right? So if you've already brought the title company and you've already brought the contractor and you've already brought the property, why not bring the money too? Why not bring the money too? Why not be able to say to your buyer, oh, and by the way, if you need financing, I can provide that too. Those of you who listen to the Waterboy case, and I talked about full service wholesaling, that's what I'm talking about. Bring everything. Bring everything. Yes, value add. Because if you bring everything, your chances of the property actually closing goes up dramatically. Think of it like this. You want to buy a car. You're like, I don't want to buy a car, Sherman. I hate car payments. I know. You have to buy a car. How's that? The car you've been driving, it's got 285,000 miles on it. You can't put it off any longer, and you have to buy a car. And you hate car payments, so you're like, you know what? I'm just going to go find me a car at CarMax because I can get a decent car for half the price because it's a year old, and the second you drive that car off the lot, the value drops like 30%. So rather than going out and buying a new car from the new car dealership, I'm going to just go to CarMax. And so you go online, search for cars, see the one you want, maybe pay the $40 fee, have it transferred to the local CarMax, and then you go to the CarMax and like, I just want to buy the car. And the first thing the guy from CarMax is going to ask you is, do you have financing? And you're like, well, I just want to check the car out, test drive it, and then I'm going to go to my credit union. And after I go to my credit union, I'll be back later. When somebody says I'll be back later, what are they really saying? When somebody says I'll be back later, exactly, never. Later equals never. Put that in the chat box, please. Later equals sign never. Later equals, anytime anybody ever says I'll do it later, like when your kids say I'll wash the dishes later, I'll take out the trash later, I'll take care of it later, like we know later equals never. When you go to the shopping mall and you go into the store and you're not exactly happy with what you saw, so you decide to walk out, but the salesperson goes, oh, can I help you? Then, yeah, I'll be back later. Later equals never. And guess what? Car salesmen know that. And I don't care whether they're working for CarMax, Mercedes, whatever. They know that. So they know that once you find the car you like, the only thing separating you from driving that car out today, which means the only thing separating them from their commission is you being able to get that purchase financed so that they can go ahead and get their check. So one of the big things they do at CarMax and Mercedes and Ford and any other dealership, new or used, if they're sophisticated, like if it's just a used car lot, forget about it. But if they're CarMax that's in the business selling used cars, they're also providing financing. Because they know if they don't provide financing, some percentage of the people who come in are going to walk out the door going, okay, I'll come back later when I get the financing taken care of. And later equals never. Well, why don't you just be CarMax? Right? You're in the business of trading on used houses. You found a used house, need some TLC, found a contractor who's willing to do it for a decent price, found a title company who's willing to make everything up. Why not just go ahead and throw financing in there to boot? And that way, the percentage of deals that you chase goes up dramatically because you're providing everything. And when you're providing everything, you're adding value. The right hard money lender will make you filthy, stinking rich, even if you never personally borrow a dime. And the reason why hard money lenders should be your preferred approach for coming up with your proof of funds versus a slug of money in the bank versus the banking relationship you have is because if the buyer says, you know what, it would be great for you to provide some financing, what do you recommend? Are you going to cash out your IRA to loan money to the buyer so the buyer can close? I don't think so. Will your banking relationship at your credit union, your banking relationship at Bank of America fund your buyer who they've never met in a timely basis so you can get paid? I don't think so. But if you get a proof of funds letter from a real hard money lender, meaning somebody who will loan to just about anybody as long as they fill out an application, that means that the person who gives you the proof of funds can also potentially fund the deal, which means you raise dramatically the odds that the deal's going to close. It's just like being CarMax. How many of the cars do you want to sell when somebody comes in and says, I want to buy a car? And y'all know the answer. That's a Chuck Norris question with a Chuck Norris answer. What is it? Give it to me. If it's a Chuck Norris question with a Chuck Norris answer, what is it? Put it in the chat box. Can y'all see that? Are you seeing that? All of them. In other words, the reason why CarMax provides financing when somebody wants to come in and buy a car is not because CarMax wants to be in the financing business. It's not that CarMax wants to be a bank. It's that they know, quite pure and simple, that if they offer financing that has attractive rates, maybe even more attractive than the credit union, then they have a much higher probability of financing every single car where somebody says, I like that car. And instead of them saying, I like that car, I'll come back later after I talk to my bank, they're like, you don't need to talk to your bank because we got the best rates in town. Why don't we sit down and go ahead and open up an application for you? And the only reason why they would walk out at that point is they know they can't get financing. Well, the good thing about us versus CarMax, the right hard money lender will finance anybody and everybody if the deal's good enough. I kid you not. Hard money lenders are in the business of making high interest rate loans for people who want to rehab houses because the collateral for the loan is the house. And most hard money lenders, quite frankly, started off in life as rehabbers. They made a boatload of money as rehabbers, and now they're loaning that money out to other people who want to get started as rehabbers. And they know for a fact that if a person screws the deal up, they can step in, foreclose, take them out, and finish the job because they used to be rehabbers. And in some cases, they still are. One of the sources that we recommend people to is Adonis Lockett. Adonis is a full-time rehabber and a full-time lender. You mess up on a deal, he knows how to find somebody to fix it and get his money back, okay? So the right hard money lender has the following attributes. Number one, they will loan money to anybody. But the only person they won't loan money to is somebody who went to jail for embezzlement. In other words, they have a track record in stealing money. That dog don't hunt. But short of that, they'll loan money to anybody, which means if you bring in a buyer and the buyer doesn't have a lender, the buyer or the buyer's lender balks at the last minute, now all of a sudden you got like 7 days to go and you need to get the property funded, the right hard money lender will basically loan money to them. So first of all, they'll loan money to anybody. Second, they can loan money quickly. They can make the decision quickly. And third, they don't have a lengthy approval process. If you tried to take your buyer to your bank, how long is that process going to take before that buyer gets approved? Days? Weeks? Maybe not at all, because your bank says, hey, we don't loan to anybody who has less than a 700 FICO score. And all of a sudden you got a buyer who wants to buy your property, but their FICO score is not 700, maybe it's 680. And on top of which, your lender is going to take 30 days to underwrite them, but the contract says you got to close in 29. You're totally jacked up if you try to use your traditional banking or your credit union. But if you're using a hard money lender who's giving the proof of funds letter, one of the things you should be saying to anybody who wants to buy a property, first question you should ask them is, do you have financing? Well, yes, I do. Well, what's your financing? Well, I'm going to take it to my credit union. Well, guess what? You've been through this lesson with me. You know that dog don't hunt. You know if somebody tries to finance a deal, a rehab deal with their credit union, you got at least a 50-50 shot that deal's not going to close. And you should be saying to them, tell you what, I don't have a problem using your credit union, but if I'm going to sell this property to you, I need for you to talk to my hard money lender. And if my hard money lender says he will loan you the money, then I will sell you the deal. But if you're going to use a credit union or Bank of America or Wells Fargo or any one of a number of different lenders who are more likely than not to not fund the deal, why are you wasting your time and theirs letting them go down that path? They're going to open up an application, tell you everything's okay. 3 days later, say everything's fine. 4 days later, order an appraisal, say everything's fine. And then 2 days before settlement, they're going to go, oh, my lender won't loan money because there's no refrigerator in the kitchen. And they say they don't make loans on properties that don't have appliances. And what are you going to do with 3 days left? Nothing. Because that deal's done crashed and burned and you can't salvage it. But if you ask them up front, where are you getting your money? And they tell you something other than a hard money lender, you say, okay, how about talking to my hard money lender? Now, if they say they got a hard money lender, you say, well, what's your hard money lender offering? Well, if their hard money lender has any rates that are higher than your hard money lenders, you should say, well, you know what, that's cool, but you ought to talk to my hard money lender because he's offering loans a lot cheaper than your guy, and still introduce him to your hard money lender. Because the right hard money lender will make you filthy, stinking rich. What do I mean by that? You can get a proof of funds letter from anybody, but why not get a proof of funds letter from a team member? In other words, somebody who will actually fund the deal, whether you borrow the money or not. And every time you put a property under contract and you convince that person to use your hard money lender is loving you all the more. And at some point in time, when you're ready to actually start borrowing money, even if your credit is not perfect, the fact that you sent that hard money lender 4 or 5 or 6 wholesale deals is going to make them much more interested in now making a loan to you. That's exactly what happened to me with Rex Frost. God rest his soul. By the time I actually got around to borrowing money from Rex, I had already sent him at least 9 buyers. He was more than happy to make a loan to me. He didn't even ask me for my credit score. He never pulled it. At the point in time, I actually asked him for money to rehab my own deal. In fact, he was the one that had to twist my arm to convince me to do it. It was a deal that fell apart, and he's like, Sherman, why don't you just go ahead and do the deal? I'll loan you the money. He knew me well enough after a year had gone by to say, hey, you're a good guy. You know how to put together good deals. I'm kind of waiting for you to come borrow some money from me. Here it is. But in the meantime, I had already sent him 9 borrowers, 9 deals. And they all closed Because the right hard money lender will make you filthy stinking rich. Somebody who will loan to anybody, including the person that you introduced them to, and they're already moving forward on loaning them money 2 days after the introduction, and not playing games. Does everybody kind of understand where I'm coming from with that? If you do, give me a thumbs up. If you understand where I'm coming from, give me a thumbs up. All right. So that's all I'm going to say on that. I'm quite confident we will continue to have conversations about hard money lenders and who's right. But the bottom line is this: a true blue hard money lender will loan money, to anybody. That's the key. If somebody says, okay, sure, I'll loan money, but they got to have a 700 FICO score, they got to fill out my 15-page application, and oh, by the way, I don't loan money on deals in Prince George's County, that's not the right hard money lender. That will totally screw up your business. Yeah, they'll give you a proof of funds letter, but if you ever had to bring somebody to them to finance a deal that you're working on, it's not going to work. So why not do business with people who do business with you? Why not do business with people who help you grow your business? Don't just get a proof of funds letter from anybody. Get a proof of funds letter from somebody who will actually help fund the deal if you need that to happen, so you can be a full service, value added wholesaler. Because the more value you bring and the more you are able to bring the financing, the more deals you will close. And the more money you will make, ka-ching, ka-ching. Everybody got that? Any questions on that? If you got questions, put it in the chat box. So I got thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Okay, cool. All right, next up, let's talk about the Mayo Formula. And this is something we're going to talk about over and over and over and over again. So it's okay if we talk about it the first time, you're hearing it for the first time and you still don't get it. You know, we're going to keep on talking about this today, tomorrow, next week. We never stop talking about Mayo. And sooner or later, if you don't already have it, it will click. So Mayo. First of all, the word Mayo, and it's spelled M-A-O, not like mayonnaise. Don't even ask me to spell mayonnaise. But Mayo stands for maximum allowable offer. Maximum allowable offer. And oh, by the way, it's your maximum allowable offer until you go see the property. And then it might creep up or it might creep down, right? So a maximum allowable offer, the formula looks like this. Mayo, or maximum allowable offer, is equal to the fair market after repair value. I oftentimes abbreviate it more like that. The fair market after repair value times the loan to value quoted by the hard money lender. So that's a floating number, minus your repair costs. That's it. Don't try to deduct your wholesale fee. And by the way, it's not a wholesale fee. It's a wholesale profit. Bird dogs earn fees. Wholesalers earn profits. But don't try to put that in the formula. You'll only gunk it up. Okay? Don't do that. Okay? It's nothing else. It's just those three things. It's like if I give you a recipe for salad dressing and you decide to put some extra stuff because you found it in the cabinet and everybody's sitting around the table going, what the heck is this? Because you put that extra ingredient in there and you didn't need to do that. Mayo equals fair market after repair value times the loan to value quoted by the hard money lender minus repair costs. So it looks like this. Mayo is going to be equal to the fair market after repair value. In other words, what are properties selling for in the neighborhood? What are properties selling for when they're fixed up? What is the fair market after repair? If this property was fixed up, what would it sell for in this neighborhood compared to other properties in the neighborhood? That's step one. Step two, multiply it by what hard money lenders are quoting. Right now, most hard money lenders are quoting 75%. When the market changes and the market's in the dumps, they may be quoting 60%. But whatever the hard, and where do you find that? By the way, where do you find what hard money lenders are quoting? Where do you find where hard money lenders are quoting in terms of their amount they'll loan versus the fair market value of the property? Exactly. Ask them. When you're getting your proof of funds letter, ask them, by the way, what's your terms? And they'll say 75% ARV, or some will say 75% loan to value. By the way, loan to value, LTV, is a commercial property term. It's a commercial property. So when you start getting in the world of commercial property, and they start talking about LTV, it's the same thing as percentage of after repair value. It means the exact same thing. So ask them. Most hard money lenders right now are quoting 75%. 75% of after repair value. I like to put in the additional fair market. In other words, you've done your homework, you're looking at properties you're trading for, the fair market after repair value, minus your repair costs. So now, let's break each one of these down. Where do we get that LTV quoted by the hard money lender? We get it from the hard money lender. So we know what that is, okay? Where do we get repair costs? I'll talk about that in a second. Where do we get fair market after repair value? Let's go to that one first. Where do we get that number that is the fair market after repair value? Where does that come from? Yes, yes, yes. You guys are so smart. High five. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. We get that number by pulling comps. Where do we get comps? Off the MLS. Now, today, I'm going to give you a little bit of background, but this is not the end of the lesson on how to pull comps. I mean, pulling comps, I will have to show you this, and I will be showing you this, and I'll be showing it to you more than a couple of times before the light bulb goes on. You go, okay, I got it now. But fundamentally, pulling comps means this. You first, please write this down. Please write this down, because it's not in my slides. Step one of pulling the fair market after repair value. Step one, we identify the neighborhood where the property is located. We identify the neighborhood where the property is located. Why? Because 80% of the value of any single family house is the neighborhood where it's located. So the first step in the process is we must identify what exactly is the neighborhood. That's not quite as easy as it sounds. In some places, neighborhood changes block by block. Generally speaking, in older, particularly northeast cities, which of course Baltimore qualifies for, the neighborhood can change block by block. And there are literally neighborhoods in Baltimore where one side of the street is the most expensive neighborhood in the city, and the other side of the street is the worst neighborhood in the city. Greenmont Avenue, which is otherwise known as York Road when it crosses over into Baltimore County, is the dividing line between one of the most expensive, the most expensive neighborhood in Baltimore and the worst drug-riddled. I mean, it's hard to believe they're right up next to each other, but they are. And it changes block by block. In some cities, like New York or Philadelphia, a building itself is a neighborhood. You could have two apartments, or in New York vernacular, co-ops, that are right next to each other and built at the same time, and yet units in one are selling for double what units in the other are. The building itself is a neighborhood. And then you have places like Prince George's County, Montgomery County, Fairfax County, where a subdivision is a neighborhood. And that's really where I'm going to focus my attention today, because that's where most of us will be going after properties. But the first step is we got to isolate what's the neighborhood. You can look at a map, you can talk to people, you can go into MLS, but fundamentally, the way you determine that a neighborhood is a neighborhood is you get in the car and you go drive it. You go get out of the car and you walk it. And then begin to understand that a railroad track, a creek, a highway can really be the thing that separates one neighborhood from another, even though both sides of the railroad tracks, both sides of where the road cuts through, both sides of where the creek cuts through, both sides have the same name. Case in point, Capitol Heights. Capitol Heights has this name, and yet one part of Capitol Heights on the south side of Central Avenue has a different valuation than north side of Central Avenue. And even though they're both called Capitol Heights, technically they're not. Technically they're not. One is Capitol Heights and one is the city of Seat Pleasant. And they have two totally different valuations, and what separates them is Central Avenue, Route 214. Upper Marlboro. Upper Marlboro is this big sprawling chunk of Prince George's County. And there are different zip codes within Upper Marlboro, 20772, 20774, and they have totally different valuations. When I lived in Howard County, they used to call parts of Howard County Ellicott City. And yet there's a part of Ellicott City that's like got houses built in the 80s. And then there's a part of Ellicott City that's like, man, are those shacks? Are people really living in those shacks? And then there's another part of Ellicott City, which is Ellicott City proper, where the houses, like, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. They're like a postage stamp size house, and they're $1 million. So the real way we begin to determine where a neighborhood ends and another neighborhood begins is we actually get out in the neighborhoods and walk them or drive them or experience them and take notes on here's where this neighborhood ends and here's the neighborhood begins. Why? Why is that so important? Because 80% of any single family house gets its value from the neighborhood. And that's something that is unique to unique to residential real estate that's not true in commercial. Now, if you're dealing with co-ops and condos, the valuation comes from the building itself. And an appraiser will say, okay, the last time a condo or a co-op sold in this building, it sold for this. And so the building itself is the neighborhood. But when you talk about single family houses or townhouses, that appraiser is going to first determine what's the neighborhood, what is and what isn't. And they're going to look and see what sold in that neighborhood. And if they can't find anything in that neighborhood, they'll jump a neighborhood, but they'll discount the fact that it's not in the same neighborhood. 80% of the value of any single family house comes from the neighborhood. So the first step in doing our Mayo formula is we've got to determine what's the neighborhood. And then once we determine what's a neighborhood, we're typically looking inside the MLS for comparables in that neighborhood that sold within the past 6 months. What has sold in the last 6 months? That becomes the fair market after repair value for our properties. Now, here's a little insider information. It's never a specific number. In other words, if I go out and I say, okay, what have houses sold for in zip code 20721 within this specific geographic area, this specific neighborhood, what have houses sold for? I'm going to see a range. I'm not going to see a specific neighborhood. Over the past 6 months, I will see a range for 5-bedroom colonial architectural style houses that are sold in that neighborhood. It'll be a range. My strong suggestion, if you can get away with it, because sometimes you get in an ultra competitive marketplace, you can't, but my suggestion is if you can't get away with it, always buy based on the lowest number. So the formula looks something like this. I pick a neighborhood, I clearly define what the neighborhood is, then I look for comparable housing types in that neighborhood, which, oh, by the way, in the suburbs, that's really easy, and I'm going to show you a video in a couple seconds that show you why that's so easy. But I want to make sure I'm comparing 5-bedroom houses to 5-bedroom houses, 4-bedroom houses to 4-bedroom, and 3 to 3. I don't want to compare a 3-bedroom house to a 5-bedroom house. I want to compare colonials to colonials. I want to compare split level or split foyer to split level, split foyer. In other words, type for type. Define the neighborhood, then find the type of property we're looking for that has sold within 6 months that's apples to apples, not apples to kumquats. Okay? If you understand what I'm saying, give me a thumbs up. If you understand what I'm saying, give me a thumbs up, okay? It will be a little bit clearer when I show you some of these videos. That's why I went out and shot videos, because like, how am I going to explain this stuff? You know what? I need to just get in the car and go show a video, okay? That is the way single family houses residential is valued. Commercial is totally different. And I know what some of you guys think. Well, how's commercial done? I'm not going to tell you, because this is not a class on how to flip commercial properties. This is not a house on how to get your first commercial deal, a class on how to get your first commercial deal in 21 days or less. I wouldn't be so preposterous to come up with a class like that. This class is on how to get house deals done in 21 days or less. So let's just focus on house deals. In residential housing house deals, it's either a fee simple freestanding house or fee simple townhouse, in which case the value will be derived from the neighborhood, or it's a condo or a co-op in the building, in which case the value will be derived from other condos or co-ops in the building. Apples to apples. So in a dense urban situation like a Philadelphia or parts of Baltimore or New York City, where you're looking at a condo or a co-op in a building, the building itself is the neighborhood. In a situation where I'm looking at townhouses, suburbia, I'm going to isolate the neighborhood, which may very well be the subdivision where the townhouses are located, and compare it to the other townhouses that are similar number of bedrooms, bathrooms. If it's a freestanding house, I'm going to isolate the neighborhood and look to see if there is a comparable number of houses that sold in that neighborhood. And if I can't find it in the neighborhood within the past 6 months, I'll jump over to another neighborhood if in fact it's comparable, but I will discount it if that neighborhood is not as nice a neighborhood. Does everybody understand that? Everybody got that? Give me a thumbs up if you got it. Okay, so error on slide. Error on slide. Mayo. Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you. Sorry, typing too fast. That should be an equal sign, not a minus sign. Thank you very much. Thanks for pointing that out. Okay, so Mayo equals the fair market after pair value times, so this part of the equation, this fair market after pair, that comes from knowing what's in the neighborhood and what has sold in the last 6 months that is in the neighborhood and of a comparable type of property. 5-bedroom to 5-bedroom, 4-bedroom to 4-bedroom, colonial to colonial, et cetera, et cetera. This part of the equation is from our hard money lender. So quite frankly, that's the easiest one to come up with. And then this part of the equation, I'm gonna show you a little trick for hijacking the system, hijacking the matrix to get that done pretty quickly, okay? So let me go through this lesson for today and kind of walk you through how do we look at neighborhoods. Would that be okay? All right, so the first thing we need to talk about is like neighborhood. What is a neighborhood? Because the answer to that may not be as easy as you think. So I have a video I want to show you. I could not find this on my computer. It was on my computer, I just can't find it. But I do know it's out there on YouTube. And yes, that is a very young and chunky Sherman Ragland. That video, that picture right there in the video is probably 12 or 15 years old. Oops, what did I just do? Stop that. The good news is it doesn't matter because nothing's changed. So let me show you this video. And let me bring up the video. And I can't do that. Can't do that. We're here. All right, everybody see that okay? Yes? Give me a thumbs up, you see it okay? Yeah? It says another real investor secret from the Dean of Real Investors. You guys see that? Okay. Let me see if I can blow that up. Can you guys see that okay? It's full screen. Can you see that okay? Give me a thumbs up. You see it? You can't? Okay, good. Well, let's go ahead and start the video. We're here in Prince George's County, Maryland, outside the County Administrative Building. This is where the Office of Planning, along with the land records, are all located. We're going to go on inside right now. I'm going to do a little bit of research, and I'm going to show you how to do the research yourself. Let's go on inside. The Maryland National Capital Park Planning Commission actually is responsible for zoning in Montgomery County, Maryland, and Prince George's County, Maryland. So we're here over the Prince George's County side. We're here at the Office of Information. So we're going to go on inside, and they're going to actually let us demonstrate to you how you do your research at the planning office. Let's go on inside. So here we are in the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Office in Prince George's County, and this is their information center. So this will be the first place that you go to when you want to get information about zoning. Now, real quick, let me show you this. This is the actual zoning map that shows when zoning came into place in Prince George's County. So we can see right here is Greenbelt, Maryland. In 1939 is when they first established zoning for Greenbelt. You can see Greenbelt here, you can see 1953, 1941 for Landover, 1927 for Bladensburg and Hyattsville. Now again, remember I told you about the Ambler versus Euclid case that established zoning across the entire country. As soon as Ambler versus Euclid was decided in the Supreme Court, almost every jurisdiction in the country established some kind of a zoning code. The first thing you have to do is create what's called a master plan. Now, Prince George's County, the master plan is actually relatively simple. The Beltway, or the Capital Beltway, that runs around DC, essentially runs through here. So basically, everything inside the Beltway in Prince George's County is what they call the developed tier, the developed tier. But the developed tier is where, in fact, they want to see most of the development. So in Prince George's County, you have 13 metro stations.
all of which, or most of which, excuse me, are inside the Beltway. And that's where they want to see the major part of development, the high density. Then you have this other road system that runs over here. It's Route 3 north of Route 50, and then it becomes Route 301 or Crane Highway, which runs all the way through. Now, everything between Crane Highway and the Beltway is called the developing tier, And then everything to the east of Route 301 is called the rural tier. Now, we'll get more into that when we talk about land development, but for today's exercise, what I really want to demonstrate to you is the fact that in America, most neighborhoods are made up of only 4 to 5 different housing types that tend to get replicated over and over again. So it's 4 to 5 different housing types. Sometimes you got 6 or 7. I'm going to prove that to you conclusively because we're going to start here in the planning office and we're going to look at a subdivision called Collington Station. That's right, Collington Station. Now on the map, this is DC, okay? And right here is Central Avenue. And Central Avenue is basically the extension of East Capitol Street. So basically the Capitol's right about here. And East Capitol Street comes all the way out to the DC line, and then it becomes Central Avenue in Prince George's County, all the way through and out to Anne Arundel County. Collington Station is located approximately right here on the eastern edge of Prince George's County, just before you get into Anne Arundel County. It is a probably typical American subdivision. It was started in the late 1970s, really sort of was built up during the 1980s, 1990s, and really sort of completed just before the year 2000. Now, step over here with me. Because it's an older subdivision, the actual subdivision plot plan is on microfiche. Can you see this okay, Darius? Okay. Now notice this. Here is Central Avenue. Here is Jennings Mill Road, excuse me, Jennings Mill Drive. And here is Joppa Lane, Jeremiah Lane, Johnsburg Lane. We're going to come into the subdivision and just sort of drive around and see the different housing type. But notice this, even before we go out to actually see the properties, notice how every one of these lots is almost the same. See the uniformity of it? Almost all these lots are between a 1/4 acre and a 1/3 acre, okay? And with the exception of the fact that some are corner lots, right? Almost all of these lots are of the same size and the same type. Again, when we talk about the fact that 80% of the value of any single family home is determined by the neighborhood, this is why. It's because the fact that there's a uniformity to the way that houses are built in America. And of course, that's all predicated, excuse me, it's all influenced by this Ambler versus Euclid decision that happened, and the Supreme Court ruled that any jurisdiction in America that was going to use zoning had to follow the parameters and the outcome of that Ambler versus Euclid case. So again, here we see that because of the zoning code in Prince George's County, almost all of these lots for all these single family houses are almost about the same size, the same shape, the same configuration. Obviously, you have to make amends for things like creeks and streams and that kind of stuff. But if you look at this subdivision plan, this portion right here, let's see here, we got 41, 46, 50, 56, we got 56 houses here. We have, looks like 39, so we have approximately 40 houses. So we got 56 and 40. So that's going to be, what's that, 86 houses. And then over on this side, you have 46 houses. And around here, you have 63 houses. So just in this subdivision right here, this part of the subdivision right here, you have almost 200 houses. But I'm going to show you conclusively when we go out here that even though there's 200 lots and 200 houses, there's really only about 4 or 5 basic building types that get replicated over and over again. So with that, with the difference being sort of the subtle distinction of the exterior of the house, all of these houses are the same. This is the reason why 80% of any single family house is going to be determined by the neighborhood. If you just stop and think about it, when somebody goes to buy a new house, what are the first 3 questions that they ask? Tell me about the schools, tell me about the crime, tell me about the shopping. Those 3 things are influenced by the neighborhood. And then once they like the neighborhood, then they start looking at the individual houses within the neighborhood. So right here, one of the things I want to show you is this is an actual zoning map for a new part of Prince George's County. Now remember how I said you have to have a master plan? This is the draft final zoning for the Branch Avenue corridor. And again, this is the Capitol Beltway around Prince George's County. And then this is a major road that comes through, which is Branch Avenue. Notice the color coding for the different zoning classifications. So OS, which would, of course would be open space. Come on around, since I can show this to you better. So OS for open space, MXT, which is for mixed use zoning, CO, which you could imagine would be for commercial office, CSC for commercial shopping center, okay? And then R classification, which of course is all of the different residential classifications. R55 being a higher density, like an apartment, R18 being like townhouses, RR being sort of rural residential, which is a less dense classification, single family houses. But notice this, even this area that's not colored in, these are all lots. These are single family house lots. And notice how they're all sort of uniform in size. But again, the way that we start the process is we have a master plan, then we have an area plan, then we have specific zoning classifications. And along with the map, we also have this, which is the zoning guide. We're going to make this available to you, but I really want you guys to get to know your local county, your local jurisdiction, every one of them, because they're following the decision of Ambler versus Euclid, follows the same basic paradigm or the same basic structure in terms of having a master plan, area plans, zoning, and zoning classifications. And that's the reason why all across the United States of America, if you know the value of the neighborhood, you know 80% of the value of the house. Hope this has been helpful. There's one more thing I wanted to show you before we get out of here, Tom. Notice this. Here's the actual housing types for this neighborhood. And those two are part of the plans. Now, again, we have it here on microfiche because it's an older subdivision. But you can begin to see that a lot of the housing types, excuse me, here we go. A lot of the housing types are the same house. It's really the same house duplicated over and over again. When we go out into the field, I'll show this to you firsthand, okay? So in any event, we want to say thank you, and we're very appreciative of our friends here at the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission and the folks over in Prince George's County for letting us come in today and use their facility and videotape. But this is the place where you start, located here in the County Administration Building on the ground floor. This is where you start when you begin to do your research to begin to look at what is the composition of the neighborhood.
All right, so that's number one. That video was actually done for a commercial property class. I actually did a commercial property class on land development, and that first piece was really more germane to that class. I also said a couple things that are not correct, but I'll fix that later. This other video, though, I think is more specific to what we're talking about. So let me go ahead and show this next video. And let me blow this up.
Now, here we are again in Collington Station, which is sort of a typical suburban neighborhood, what you might call an upper class neighborhood in Prince George's County. And you can find these kind of neighborhoods all over the greater Washington, D.C. region. Now, to the average person, they would call this a neighborhood. We as investors could call that a neighborhood, or we could call it by its technical name, which is a subdivision. And as I showed you over at the Park and Planning Office or the zoning office, all of the lots that all these houses sit on are about the same shape, same size and configuration. Notice there's two houses over my shoulder. Take a close look. On the surface, they look like two completely different houses. But if you actually take a little bit closer look, and I'm gonna step out of the field of view so you can actually get a better look. But if you take a look at both of those houses side by side, you're gonna see they're the exact same house. Take a look. Now notice what I'm talking about. Even though one house is white with green shutters and one is brick with green shutters, look at them. They're the identical house, almost the mirror image. One's got the garage on the left side, one has the garage on the right side, but it's the same house with one slight subtlety, which is the house on the left actually has a little bump out. Okay, you see that little bump out there? It could be like a garden room or just a sort of an extension off the house. It was probably built by the builder. When the house was originally built, it was probably an option. That little bump out could increase the value by a couple $1,000s. But at the end of the day, these two houses are the exact same house on the inside. They are 5-bedroom colonial houses, okay? So understand what I'm talking about when I say that 80% of the value of any single family house in America is determined by the neighborhood. And it's these little subtle differences like the little bump out or the corner lot, that's what increases the value or determines a higher value or lower value. If one house needed a lot more repair, then you could say, okay, I'm gonna deduct some money. But this is the reason why once you understand the value of the neighborhood, it is so much easier to do single family houses in terms of doing things like wholesaling houses, bird dogging the right way, and rehabbing houses, because once you understand the value of the neighborhood, you're 80% of the way there. And the extra 20% or that additional 20%, that's the individual characteristics of what's specifically happening with that individual house. But as a case in point, if these two houses behind me, let's say this neighborhood was a $500,000 neighborhood, you would not expect to see one of the houses selling for $600,000. It's just not going to happen. If this is a $500,000 neighborhood, one house might sell for $485,000, one house might sell for $505,000 or $515,000, depending on what's going on inside the house. But generally speaking, if this is a $500,000 neighborhood, all the houses in this neighborhood are going to sell around the $500,000 price point, because 80% of the value of any single family house in America that was built after 1926 is going to be determined by what's going on in the neighborhood. All the lots are the same, essentially all the houses are the same, and what's happening is the individual characteristics, like is it a finished basement, not a finished basement? Is it a corner lot, like the house behind me? Go ahead and take a look at this house right here, Darius. Is it a corner lot? If it's a corner lot, it's going to get some additional value. But take a look down the street. Just take a look right on down the street, Darius. If you really pay close attention, you're going to see that all the houses are basically the same model with slight differences, very slight differences. There are only about 4 or 5 basic models, and one time the house garage is on the left side, in some cases on the right side. In some cases it's red brick, in some cases it's brown brick, in some cases it's what's called buff or white brick. But the bottom line, folks, is that 80% of the value is based on this neighborhood. It's based on where this house is located. It's based on the fact that all the houses have essentially the same size lot. Now, I guarantee you there's going to be a slight premium. Again, like if you turn around over here, this part of the neighborhood is on what's called a cul-de-sac, okay? And usually houses on a cul-de-sac have a slight increase or slight premium in value versus these houses over here, which are also lined up just like little toy soldiers down the street. But the bottom line, folks, is that if this is a $500,000 neighborhood, all of the houses are going to trade within about the same price. The value of the neighborhood can go up, and the value of the neighborhood can go down, which is why it's critically important that you get your own direct access to the multiple listing service. It's only through the multiple listing service that you can actually see what's going on in the neighborhood. If I wanted to find out what was going on in terms of values either going up or values going down, I'm not going to find that out by walking around the neighborhood. If I were to knock on all these doors and say, hey, tell me about the neighborhood, they're going to say it's a great neighborhood, it's a safe neighborhood, but they can't tell me what the last 2 houses in this neighborhood sold for. The only way I can get direct access to that information is to look at what's going on in the multiple listing service. The multiple listing service tells me whether or not values are going up, or values are going down, or values are staying flat, okay? Now, here's the key. When you're first getting started as an investor, you want to get out, drive the car, park the car, and then go around and look at the neighborhood and get to know the neighborhood. Then you want to start your research by going online to see what's going on in the multiple listing service. Again, I can't tell whether values are going up or down simply by walking the neighborhood. I can tell if it's a good neighborhood, so to speak. I can tell you if, basically the houses are well kept. I can tell you again, in this neighborhood, these are what I would call pretty houses, but you can make a lot of money in pretty houses. You can make a lot of money in ugly houses. The main thing is to get to know what is the neighborhood and where does the neighborhood start and where does the neighborhood end. Any properties or any subdivisions or any neighborhoods that were created after 1926, which of course is when the Euclid versus Ambler decision was handed down by the Supreme Court, they're going to follow the zoning code that was created and the outline of what is an appropriate zoning code in that Supreme Court decision, which basically means that all the houses in this subdivision, in this neighborhood, are going to be about the same size, about the same shape, and they're going to sit on the same size lot. So if I'm talking about a subdivision like this one, Collington Station, which has 650 houses, this is a neighborhood. And all I need to do is go into the multiple listing service and say, tell me what's going on at Collington Station. And this is exactly why, once you understand this business and you understand this key secret, you can actually begin to buy and sell or buy and wholesale or buy and flip houses online from home, sitting in your underwear. That's what you want to do. And once you come out here and look at the neighborhood's not going to change that much over the next couple of years. It's just not going to change, especially a neighborhood like this one where all the houses are built. Yeah, I'm going to point out to you the fact that there's a brand new shopping center being built just outside this neighborhood. But the bottom line is this neighborhood's not going to change. Once I know this neighborhood, I can tell what's going on inside the neighborhood, not by coming back out and walking around. I can tell what's going on inside this neighborhood by going onto the multiple listing service and researching and seeing what the different trends are over time. If you're going to be a real investor, you've got to understand this first fundamental rule. 80% of the value of all single-family houses in America are determined by the neighborhood. Get to know the neighborhood, and you have a very clear picture as to what that house is probably worth. When we buy our houses, we do something called a competitive market analysis, or run comps, C-O-M-P-S. Broker price opinion, CMA, and comps are all the same thing. It's a different label for the same thing. And essentially what I'm doing is I'm saying, tell me what's going on in this neighborhood in terms of sales. I want to look at the past 6 to 9 months, and I want to see what was the sales activity. I'm looking for somewhere in the order of 5 to 7 comps, or 5 to 7 transactions. I'm going to throw out the high, and I might throw out the low, and what's left is going to be about 5 what I call valid comps. I'm going to buy based on the low number, and I'm going to run my analysis, determine my Mayo, make my offer, and either wholesale the house or fix it up. In other words, rehab it and resell it, and I'm going to sell it on the high number, okay? But again, 80% of the value of any single family house is determined by the neighborhood. And I hope you got this point by coming out here with me today. Thanks.
All right. So in the chat box, you tell me, 80% of the value of any single family house is determined by what? Put it in the chat box. 80% of the value of any single family house is determined by what? You see, put it in the chat box. Boom, neighborhood. So step 1 in that Mayo formula is determining exactly what is the neighborhood. And that's just something that's going to happen, quite frankly, over time. Let me, I should have a slide on this, and I don't have a slide, and I apologize. But let me sort of walk you through a little something that I think would be helpful. I thought that first video would do a good job, but now I look at the video, and it's been a few years. I'm like, you know what, you need to redo that video. So prior to 1926, and think about what this country looked like in 1926. Like, how many people had cars in 1926? Almost nobody. And therefore, most people were living in an urban or city. They were taking public transportation, etc. Prior to 1926, local governments really didn't have much influence as to how people use their property. And so like in Baltimore City, 1926 Baltimore City, you had open air markets, you had people raising chickens, you had people raising poultry, you had people slaughtering chickens and poultry and slaughtering pigs, and blood was running in the streets. And it was pretty nasty, pretty foul, but that's the way it was. And then in prior to 1926, call it 1922, 1924, I don't remember the exact dates, there was a real estate development company called Ambler, A-M-B-L-E-R, Ambler Realty, and they decided that they wanted to buy a huge chunk of land in a city called Euclid, Ohio. Euclid, Ohio is fairly close to Cleveland. And they decided they wanted to develop the property a certain way, and the city of Euclid told them no, they couldn't. And so Ambler Realty sued the city of Euclid, Ohio, and said, we can do whatever we want, it's our property. And the Constitution protects property rights. And the city of Euclid said, yeah, but we are building the city and we want to build the city so it doesn't look like Cleveland. You know, people slaughtering chickens and smelting iron in apartments and slums all on top of each other. We don't like the way our cities look in America, and we're going to do something about it. And we come out a little bit away from Cleveland to create this beautiful suburb, and we don't want to see you do what you want to do. So they went round and round about, sued each other, went to the, I guess, the Ohio Supreme Court, or whatever they call it in Ohio, and ultimately it made it to the US Supreme Court. And the US Supreme Court ruled in 1926 that the city of Euclid, Ohio did in fact have the power to regulate what Ambler Realty could do with its property. And that was the first time in America that a court case had been decided in favor of municipalities saying, yes, you have the power to regulate. And the power to regulate comes from something called police power, not the police, but a city or a jurisdiction's ability to implement rules and regulations as a part of their quote unquote policing power or police power with a small p. And everybody in America took notice of this. Real estate developers took notice of it, landowners took notice of it, and most importantly, cities and jurisdictions took notice of it, particularly those cities, those jurisdictions that weren't developed but were about to be developed. Because essentially what the Supreme Court said was, look, if you, the county, or you, the city, or you, the township, put in place something called a master plan that is available to everybody so there's no hidden secrets, and you want to say, okay, look, we want houses over here, we want industrial over here, we want a commercial over here, and we want a separation between the most noxious things like slaughtering pigs and slaughterhouses, and we want to have a complete separation of use between the slaughtering of animals and where people live. You, the city of Euclid, Ohio, have the power to do that, but you have to have a master plan, and then you have to have a zoning plan, a zoning code. And as long as you make that publicly available to everybody and everybody knows what the rules are up front, we will allow you to tell folks, hey, what you want to do with this piece of property is not allowed in that zone, under that zoning, or in that part of town. And fundamentally what happened was our entire way of developing real estate after 1926 is based on Ambler versus Euclid and the concept of subdivision and subdivision plans. So for a home builder to build houses today, and since 1926, they have to actually go to the county and say, we want to put together a subdivision plan. And the county says, okay, based on the master plan and based on the zoning code for that part of the county, these are your options, this is what you can build. And if they want to build something outside of that, then they have to petition the county to rezone the property, which is an incredibly lengthy public process and horribly expensive. So most developers are like, no, we don't want to rezone it. We just want to go with what the code says. Tell us what our options are. And as long as they do that, everything's cool. So the first step is they comply with existing zoning. Second step is they file a subdivision plan. Third step is they say, okay, here's what we're going to actually do within the subdivision plan. So in America, those properties that are developed after 1926 are subdivisions. And those subdivisions basically are neighborhoods. Does everybody understand that? I don't want to give anybody a headache. It's still early in the night. I don't give anybody a headache, and I certainly don't want to go for 3 hours. But does everybody understand that basic concept? Subdivision is neighborhood. And if it's a part of the United States that was approved or developed after 1926, it's going to follow the edicts or the outline of the Ambler versus Euclid case, okay? Now, what if your city was built before 1926? Can anybody think of a city that was built or laid out before 1926? Like Washington, D.C., or Baltimore, or Philly. If it's Baltimore, Philly, Washington, D.C., it's too late. Now, D.C. is the exception because D.C. was a master plan. LaFont laid out a beautiful city. It was always supposed to be the capital city. So you, as a result, you never had slaughterhouses and that kind of stuff like you have in Philly, Baltimore, etc. But in Baltimore and in parts of Prince George's County, like inside the Beltway, like Capitol Heights, you have parts of the city that were started, the development was started before 1926. And the rules of Ambler versus Euclid didn't apply. The Supreme Court hadn't decided the case. And so you do see literally uses on top of uses that just kind of really don't make sense. Like, here's a junkyard and tires stacked a mile high and old cars stacked a mile, right next to single family houses. How can that possibly? Because it's pre-1926. And what happened was, in order to facilitate making this easy for everybody, municipalities had to quote unquote grandfather stuff in. And the easiest way to grandfather something in is to say, whatever you're doing, you can keep on doing until the property sells. Thinking, well, maybe the property will sell in 10 years. Well, there's some properties that haven't sold since 1926. And they're still grandfathered in for that use. Does everybody understand that? If you understand that, give me a thumbs up. All right. So again, this is not meant to be a land development class, and this is not meant to be a commercial property class, but I'm just sort of laying out the sort of framework of how did we come up with this, and why is it that when I go to Prince George's County, everything's sort of vanilla and looks the same, and when I go to Baltimore, it's literally block by block. It's because one jurisdiction started to develop after 1926, and one jurisdiction started way before 1926. And if you started way before 1926, you don't really have the luxury of sort of starting over. You got to start with what you got. Okay. So with that, I got a couple more videos I want to show, if it's okay with you guys. But these are a little more modern because I actually shot these today. All right. So let me share screen. Where's my share screen? There's my share screen. And I'm going to share this screen. Share. And here we go.
Hey, Sherman, the Real Investor, and we're going to be going out today doing one of my favorite topics, which is looking at neighborhoods. And you know from what I've told you before that 80% of the value of any single family house is because of the neighborhood. And we'll be talking more and more about that today. I'll also be talking about the Mayo Formula, which I've already explained to you, but we'll be talking about that again today. And most importantly, I just want to show you what I think is important in terms of understanding neighborhoods. There's lots of different ways that real estate investors, real estate agents grade neighborhoods. I like to use a simple A, B, C, D, E, F scale. I think most people understand from K through 12 education what an A is, what a B is, what a C is, D, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to be using my ABCD formula, and I'm going to be sharing with you how I go look at a neighborhood, letting you look over my shoulder, and showing you what I think are the best neighborhoods for investors, both in terms of when you first get started, which is a little bit different than when you've been at this for a while, as well as where you should be if you're sort of an intermediary or more advanced investor. So first thing I want to share with you is just sort of my kit. You know, what do I take with me in the street when I get out there? So I need to flip the camera. Let's see if we can do that real quick. Nope, I'm going to stop this and then start the video over again. I'm going to show you my little kit before we actually hop in the car and head out. So let's talk about what you need to take with you when you head on out. First of all, we need a mobile device. I always take my iPad, or almost always, and making sure you've got your Real Investors mobile MLS app loaded up. That's what you should see when you first sign up. And then of course you can actually pick the houses, and it gives you a map up top, which shows you where you are in properties that are for sale, for lease, et cetera, in close proximity. And then of course the individual properties based on each one of these little dots, okay? We're gonna use this a lot when we're out in the field. If we're interested in, okay, what are the comps? Great thing about this tool is it actually has a, what do they call it? Geotometer or something like that. But basically it knows where you are, and therefore the feeds you get are based on where you are. So wherever you go, wherever you drive, it will tell you what the properties are, and you can adjust the size, right? Okay, so here we are, all the properties that are sort of in Prince George's County. I have to click another button. Well, it actually gives us DC, across the river, right? And then I can sort of blow it up if I want to have the stuff that's in real close proximity to me and see what's available. And then of course, I can also have a view where I actually have the properties. So where I am, let me see what I'm looking for. Okay, another layer is I want the houses, all right? And it gives me everything. I'm going in the wrong direction. I'll figure this out off camera and then come back to it. Next, we need to have our liquid refreshment. So I like to have a nice canteen of coffee with me when I go, and also some water, stay hydrated, you know, stay thirsty, my friend. Then my most important tool, less so honestly today than when I was first getting started. When I was first getting started, this was kind of my Bible, not this one particularly. I used something called an ADC map. And they also call them quote unquote city guides or street guides. This one is by Rand McNally, and it's the whole entire Washington, DC area including Northern Virginia and Prince George's County and Montgomery County. But what this gives you, so this is sort of the layout in various grids. What it gives you is the whole city and the region laid out on a grid. So you can then go to turn to the individual maps and see literally what they call block and grid, block by block, grid by grid, specific streets. And this is a great way and a great tool, especially when you're first getting started, to be able to see visually where does one neighborhood end and another neighborhood begin. And hint, 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 oftentimes what separates one neighborhood from another is a road or railroad tracks or a specific line dividing one jurisdiction from another. So I think this is the Fairfax County. I'm not really sure what this is, but this is some kind of a geopolitical line here, the purple, a lake. So this is probably one neighborhood. This is probably another neighborhood. This is probably a third neighborhood. And it's really important that as we go along, we're able to decide where does one neighborhood end and another neighborhood begin, because an oftentimes newbie mistake that folks make is they're looking at properties here, but they're getting their comps from properties over here. And clearly this being Shirley Highway, right? That's a major division. Anything over here is going to be one neighborhood, I can tell you that, and anything over here is another neighborhood. Another neighborhood. So we don't want to be looking at houses here and pulling comps from over here. We really need to understand where does one neighborhood end and another begin. Even if somebody says, oh, well, that's Shirlington, and sort of generically calls this whole thing Shirlington, knowing full well that this is one neighborhood over here, this is a different neighborhood with probably totally different values. So I'll explain more about that when we get out the street. I also like to have some Post-it notes. I could only find my desk one. Normally I'd have like a little separate Post-it note, not this big heavy glass thing, but I'm gonna bring this with us, we'll put it in the car. And this allows us to pull out the Post-it notes, put things on a specific page, and write a note to ourselves, write a little guide to ourselves. Think of this as your personal Bible. Think of this as nobody's gonna look at this but you. And therefore, you wanna have notation, feel free to write on it. And I know some investors are like, well, Sherman, I've got GPS in my car. Well, you can't write on your GPS, but you can write on this. And this is gonna help you tremendously as you begin to figure out what's a neighborhood or where one neighborhood begins and another one ends, okay? Making sure that you're not sort of getting confused that, oh, you know, it's in this part of town, but not this part of town, it has the same name, it's not the same neighborhood. And again, I'll demonstrate that more when we get out there. Next, I like to have an assortment of pens that I typically include in like a little baggie. So, you know, a highlighter, a red pen, a black Sharpie, a blue pen. That's sort of my minimum kit. And I put it in a nice little baggie so it's always there when I need it. And these two things typically stay with each other so that when I'm ready to hit the street, I'm not fumbling around trying to find, oh, where's my highlighter, where's my red pen, blah, 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 blah. And again, we're gonna use these tools to mark this thing up and leave notes to ourselves and take notes for ourselves as we're going out exploring neighborhoods. And then finally, we need some kind of what I call a PPD, personal protection device, meaning, now this is pepper spray. I think I actually bought this one for my wife or my daughter. I actually keep mine, which is twice as much as this one. I actually keep mine on the leash for my doggie because my doggie is also part of my personal protection device. I take my big old 70-pound Doberman Pinscher with me, and he'll be coming today, you get a chance to see him, along with some kind of pepper spray. That at a minimum is what you should be doing. Not necessarily the dog, but at least having some pepper spray because you never know when some wild animal, either four-legged or two-legged, is gonna come up on you without you noticing them coming up on you, and you need to defend yourself. And I carried a pepper spray on my dog leash for years, never had to use it. And then one day we were out walking or going for a little jog, and out of nowhere comes this unleashed dog who decides he wants to attack me and attack my dog. And but for the pepper spray, no telling how that story would have ended, okay? Some of you like something with a little more firepower. That's another lesson for another day. But at a minimum, at least have yourself some pepper spray. And if you need them, make sure you got your readers, have a spare pair of readers, because it doesn't do you any good to be looking something up but you can't read the darn thing, all right? So that's kind of my travel kit. Optionally, maybe taking along, you know, some 3x5 index cards, again, just to sort of take some notes. But the truth of the matter is, I think the stickies and having the ability to put the stickies on the map is probably going to get the job done. So let's go ahead and get Bruno all suited up, and let me get my coat on, and let's head on out, and let me show you how to look at some neighborhoods.
All righty. I had a little trouble getting a couple of videos embedded, so let me share this screen and bring up, I'm gonna have two videos that are not in the slides, and then I got two videos that are in the slides. So let me bring up the videos. Just gonna bring that up real quick. And let me go ahead and share screen. Okay, I think this is gonna work. And oops, it's gonna take a little second to download. Loading, 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 loading. We're almost done. We're almost there. Almost there. Almost there. We're there. Hey, Sherman Ragland, real investor. And so here we are in our first neighborhood. And as you can see, this is a neighborhood filled with beautiful 8,000 square foot, $1 million mansions. Not a single house is sitting on less than 2 acres. And not a single house in this neighborhood is available or for sale for less than $1 million. And some a whole lot more. So this is what I would generally describe as an A neighborhood. This is where everybody wants to live. Well, not everybody, but many people want to live. This is kind of what you aspire to do someday, right? And you're like, hey, as an investor, why don't I just run out here and get myself one of these $1 million houses and hit it out of the park? Good luck with that. So as you know, from the Mayo Formula, you know, maximum allowable offer, the Mayo Formula is we take the ARV, right, the after repair value, or I oftentimes say the FM, fair market after repair value. In other words, what's the value of the houses, the overall value of the houses in the neighborhood. We take the fair market after repair value and we multiply that by 0.75 or 0.65 or 0.70, depending upon what hard money lenders are quoting for hard money loans. So if we just simply take 0.70, right? Take $1 million, $1 million times 0.70, that's $700,000. That's $700,000, okay? Now, even before we get into repair costs, right? Think about this for a second. If you're gonna buy a house in this neighborhood, fix it, flip it, you're gonna be spending at least 1% in interest costs per month. So 1% in interest costs on $700,000 is $7,000 a month just for the loan. $7,000 a month. And oh, by the way, average days on market, DOM, average days on market for $1 million plus houses. Again, depending upon the jurisdiction, depending on the neighborhood. But this is what I would classify as one of the highest in neighborhoods in Prince George's County. Certainly the highest in neighborhood in Prince George's County is probably the gated community of Woodmore. But the gated community of Woodmore, the houses inside the gate in Woodmore are oftentimes smaller and have smaller lots and are close together. So there's actually more expensive houses in some parts of Woodmore, there are more expensive houses in this neighborhood, which is not a gated community, than you find in Woodmore. Now, granted, in Woodmore, there's a couple of houses that are like 20,000 square feet, sit on 10 acres, and they're like, you know, $15 million. But for the most part, most of the houses in Woodmore are sitting on pretty much an acre or half an acre or less. So, but in any event, this is probably as desirable to some people, if not the second most desirable. So you're talking about in a neighborhood like this, seeing houses sit on market, days on market, where they're in pristine condition for at least a year, because that's what happens with high-end houses and high-end neighborhoods, especially when it's the highest in neighborhood for that jurisdiction. There's not a lot of people in Prince George's County buying $1 million plus houses. There are some, clearly, because they're here, right? But not a lot. So therefore, average days on market for a house like this, 6 months if you're lucky. So let's say you buy the house, you fix it up, you're able to get a really good price, but you're still paying $7,000 to $10,000 a month in interest costs. That's $60,000 if you hold that house for 6 months while you buy it, fix and flip it. That's $120,000 in interest payments if it sits for a year. This, my friends, is why you're not going to start in the A neighborhoods, okay? But I wanted to come out and show it to you and show you what I'm talking about. And the funny thing, you know, and again, we talk about this all quite often, 80% of the value of any single family house, 80% of the value of any single family house is based on the neighborhood where it's located. Therefore, all the houses in this neighborhood, no matter whether they're bigger or smaller, approximately 80% of the value comes from the neighborhood itself. Interesting enough, you take any one of these houses, pick it up if you could, plop it down in Loudoun County, Virginia, plop it down in western Montgomery County, plop it down in Fairfax County, you can add another $1 million to the price tag.
So these are $1 million houses, 1.2, 1.4, 1.6. Put the same house behind me in Fairfax County or Loudoun County, that's a $2.6 million house. 80% of the value of any single family house comes from the neighborhood. Now, this is our A neighborhood. This is what I would just qualify as A. This may be where you aspire to live, but you're probably not going to find any deals here. On top of which, a mortgage payment on $1 million or $1.2 million, $1.3 million is probably going to be about $5,000 to $7,000 again once it's fully fixed up. And you probably would have a hard time renting this house out. 5-bedroom house, 4 bathrooms, 5-bedroom house, 7 bathrooms. You'd have a hard time renting that house out for much more than $4,000. Because you can't chop it up into, you know, a multi-family kind of house. It's not allowed. It's not permitted in the homeowners association documents. So here's your A neighborhood. Take a good look. This is where we aspire to live, but this is not where we're going to get started as investors. So let's go on down to a B neighborhood and see what that looks like.
All right, let's do that. Let's go see a B neighborhood. That be okay? Let's go see a B neighborhood and compare what a B looks like versus an A. So, where are you? Oh, this one's got to load up a little bit too. Let's go ahead and say share screen. While it's loading up. This will just take a second because these are big files. These are 2-3 gigabyte files. So it'll take a split second. Come on, come on. Almost there. Almost there. All right. We're there. So here we are in Collington Station, one of my favorite neighborhoods. This is what I would call or classify as a B neighborhood. Notice the houses are a little smaller, a little closer together. On average in this neighborhood, most of the houses are sitting on, you know, 1/4 acre lots to 1/3 of an acre lot. Whereas the neighborhood we just came out of, most of the houses are sitting on 2 acre lots, right? So I can probably get 8 times as many houses in the next neighborhood, except they wouldn't allow it. The zoning in that neighborhood only allows for a minimum 1.5 acre lots. And most of those lots are 1.5, 1.7, 2, 2.5, but on average about 2 acres. Here, on average, is about 1/4 acre to 1/3 of an acre. Now, houses a little bit smaller, but most importantly, the neighborhood was started in the sort of late 70s, early 80s, and most of the houses here were really sort of built in the mid to late 80s, maybe early 90s. So now this neighborhood is, you know, 20, 30 plus years old. And most neighborhoods don't get built in the same year. Usually a neighborhood is built over a couple of different years. On average, in a suburban jurisdiction or suburban location like this, you know, and again, we're here in Prince George's County, you would classify the neighborhood we came out of as sort of estate homes, and a neighborhood that we're in right now sort of as executive homes. But I would call this a B neighborhood. It's a B neighborhood simply because the average age of the houses are 20 years, 30 years older than the neighborhood we just came out of. And for the most part, when a house gets to be about 20, 30 years old, stuff starts to break. Houses are built out of systems, right? So you have a foundation system, the basement, right? Or whatever the foundation is. That foundation ought to last hundreds of years. But if it's not done properly up front, or if you have earthquakes or you have bad soil, foundations can start to deteriorate, break down in about 30, 40 years, right? But for the most part, a foundation should last forever. Then you have the framing, right? Which is the actual framing, the wood frame of the house. With the exception of maybe some termite damage or other kind of wood boring insects like ants, as long as you don't have termites and ants, that framing again should last, you know, 50, 60, 100, 100 plus years. But then you get into things like the roof. Roof is good for about 20 years. And so when you're in a neighborhood where the average age of the house is 25, 30 years, they're all kind of starting to need new roofs. And then the next system is sort of your plumbing. Plumbing should be good for a while, but plumbing does start to break down after about 25, 30 years. So you start to have plumbing issues and plumbing fixtures that need to be replaced. Certainly water heaters need to be replaced and help you if the water heater leaks and the water causes damage, then you got all kinds of issues. But
That kind of stuff starts to break down after 20, 30 years. And then you have heating ventilation system, HVAC. And the HVAC system is your heating system, your heat pump, your air conditioning. Those break down in about 10, 15 years. So at 30 years of age, you're now getting ready to put your second set of heat pumps, your second set of air conditioners. Then you get electrical system. Electrical system should last a long time, except if you got electrical systems that were installed in the 70s when they were using aluminum wiring, that's got some issues associated with that. But for the most part, when neighborhoods, houses in the neighborhood start to be about 30 years old, it can't be an A quality neighborhood. If this was a neighborhood of all brand new houses, I might give it a B+. But when you do sort of comparison apples to apples, where we came out of, where we are here, it's a B neighborhood. It's a solid B neighborhood. Now, can you find deals here? Oh, yes, you can. But it's not quite where new investors should start. Average price of a house in this neighborhood is about $500,000, 480 to 550. That's towards the upper end of where most newbies should be looking. Can be great neighborhood for fixer-uppers because houses are starting to need some TLC. But this neighborhood, like many neighborhoods of this age, has what's called an HOA or homeowners association. And one of the things that the homeowners association does is they enforce HOA rules in terms of the exterior of the house. So you don't see houses getting too far along in a state of disrepair because the HOA is going to come out here every spring, do an inspection. And if they see, hey, listen, the front part of your house is starting to look a little weather worn, they're going to force you to fix it. And if you don't fix it, they're going to fine you. And once they find you, they can start putting liens on the property. So houses that are in neighborhoods that are 30, 40 years old with HOAs, homeowners associations, which really started to kick off big time in Maryland in about the 1970s, 80s. Homeowner associations weren't very well understood until Columbia, Maryland was built in 1962, 58, 62. It started planning in 58, started getting built in 62. And that's when homeowners associations really started to be tested in courts and really started to come on the scene. And sort of like the period of the 70s, 80s, 90s, and now, HOAs, homeowner associations are all the rage. And one of the reasons for homeowners association is it adds another layer of sort of government, quasi-government, to enforce, code restrictions. And the main thing that homeowners associations are concerned about is the upkeep of the houses, make sure that the values of the houses are kept up. So therefore, in these neighborhoods that were built, 70s, 80s, definitely 90s, yes, and anything more current than that, they're going to have a very strong homeowner association, and therefore the houses are not going to fall too far in disrepair, unlike houses that are in neighborhoods without HOAs. So bottom line is you can find deals here, but this is not where you're going to hit pay dirt. So, but this is a B neighborhood, okay? This is a B neighborhood in the scale that I use, A, B, C, D, right? So let's go a little bit further and find the C neighborhood and see what that looks like, okay? Let's go.
All right, so now I can go back to the slides because I didn't have any problem getting the videos in the slides. And let me go ahead and say share screen. Back to the slides, and let's do this.
Okay, so here we are in an older part of Bowie, Maryland. It's not the oldest part. The oldest part of Bowie is actually up near the railroad tracks up near Bowie State University. But this is what was a part of what was called the Bel Air Estate, which was an old horse racing farm. Many of you guys know horse racing actually originated in Maryland, right? And so Bowie was the home of the famous Bowie racetrack. And this was all this huge mega estate that ties itself back to, I think, the Ogle family and the Bowie family, which was old Maryland families, and both of them were governors. But this large estate what fell into bankruptcy, and William Levitt out of Long Island, New York, who very famously built a lot of houses for GIs coming back from World War II, acquired the Bowie estate, and he built thousands, literally thousands of houses. And this part of Bowie that was built by Levitt was started roughly about 1960, so almost about the same time as Columbia. He acquired it from the bankruptcy court in 57. Columbia sort of got to start in 58, but they were two very different developers with two very different visions. Columbia, of course, was built by Jim Rouse out of Eastern Shore, Easton fame, and of course, Baltimore City fame. And Levitt came out of New York. And Levitt was, how do I say this kindly? He was somewhat of a segregationist. So there were deed restrictions that prevented people from selling properties to people who look like me, whereas Columbia was a slightly different vision. But here's my point. Forget about that for a second. Let's talk about making some money. I would classify this as a C neighborhood simply because of the fact that the age of the houses. This is part of the newer section of Bowie, of the Levitt Bowie, excuse me. And so many of the houses in this street were built 1970s, with the exception of the one behind me. And I don't know if the house here originally burned down or somebody just never built on this lot, but a real estate developer has come in and bought this lot. We actually rehabbed the house and then turned it into a rental behind me, but a developer came in. So this is obviously a brand new house, but for the most part, most of the houses on this street were built in the 70s. So that makes these houses, you know, up there, 50 years old. And in 50 years, there can be a lot of repairs that need to be made, et cetera, et cetera. What makes Bowie really different from Columbia is that Columbia has a very strong homeowners association. And as I said before, in the other neighborhood, homeowners associations keep houses from going too far down. Bowie doesn't have, this part of Bowie does not have a homeowners association. There is no HOA for this part of Bowie. Now, this is in the city of Bowie, and the city of Bowie has code enforcement, but code enforcement is not coming out and inspecting every house in the city of Bowie every single year. It's usually not until a neighbor complains, but by the time a neighbor complains about something they see on the outside, there's probably been stuff falling down on the inside for years. And so this is a good area. This is a good neighborhood to find properties. And new investors can and should look at neighborhoods like this sort of Levitt section of Bowie. These houses are built in the 1970s. Same is true in parts of Upper Marlboro, if you're in Prince George's County or you're the DC region. And obviously, if you're outside the DC region, you probably looking at stuff like this and go, yeah, I know neighborhoods that look like this. I grew up in a neighborhood that looks like this, right? But what makes this different from the B neighborhood is two things, really. One, the age of the properties, because most of the properties in the B neighborhood were built in the 80s. Most of the properties here, 80s and 90s, excuse me, most of the properties here in this neighborhood were built in the 70s, with the exception, obviously, the one directly behind me that's under construction right now. So you're talking about houses that are, again, 40, 50 years old. And of course, beautiful trees. They're even more beautiful, they got leaves on them, but beautiful mature trees, but older houses, and houses that have a lot of deferred maintenance, and houses that need a lot of quote unquote TLC. So there are opportunities, and these, quite frankly, they're smaller houses. You can see they're smaller houses than the neighborhood we came out of. But the real thing that makes them different is the two things of being older houses and no homeowners association. The main thing is the lack of a homeowners association means there's nobody coming around every single year doing property inspections, and that means that there can be a lot of built up deferred maintenance that happens inside these houses. So when they go, not only because of the age, but because oftentimes nobody's really sort of watching, looking, making sure that stuff is in repair. When they go, your rehab costs are going to be $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. They're not going to be carpet and paint kind of things. But this is a good place for investors to find deals. And because this is a good place for investors to find deals, it's a good place for wholesalers to find deals. But it's not your best. So this is a C neighborhood. And it's not your best because, people take care of these houses and tend to stay in these houses, and you don't see as many. So it's not your best place as a wholesaler, but as a wholesaler, this kind of a B quality neighborhood could be a good neighborhood. And again, I want to get away from this new house and show you, again, so you can sort of see what's going on here, right? Good neighborhoods, but not necessarily your best as a wholesaler. So one more stop, and then we'll sort of wrap this thing up, and then I'll talk about the two other classification neighborhoods. So let's go one more stop.
So I made an error. I said B, I meant to say C. That's a C quality neighborhood. The other thing about that neighborhood, none of these houses have basements. All these houses that Levitt built in the 70s in the city of Bowie are what's called slab on grade. So there's no basement. So when you start thinking about in terms of storage area, opportunity to finish out a basement, that's not even on the table in this sort of Levitt section of Bowie. And Levitt built like 30,000 of these things. It's huge. Other things that are comparable, if you're in Prince George's County, Lanham, Seabrook, you see a lot of houses that are very similar, neighborhoods that are similar. I'm trying to think of the neighborhood that sort of in between the Beltway and Church Road, and I'm having a difficult time thinking of the name of that neighborhood. But again, I would classify those as C neighborhoods. And as I said before, good opportunity for deals. The lack of a homeowners association means nobody's coming out and doing an annual inspection. And so therefore, problems can accrue, deferred maintenance can accrue, and it's not typically until a neighbor complains that the city will come out or the county will come out. And therefore, by the time somebody comes out to put, you know, a code enforcement thing on the door, the house is really far gone, really far gone. But that's not the best neighborhood. This, in my opinion, is what you want to think about, okay?
Okay, so here we are in my favorite neighborhood, as I oftentimes say. If Prince George's County, Maryland didn't exist, real estate investors would have created it. And you probably recognize this house. This house is Rollins Avenue. It's been the subject of 3 case studies that we've already seen. And we're here in Capitol Heights. And Capitol Heights is a D neighborhood. Now, before you hit me with emails and flame me and like, Sherman, I live in Capitol Heights. How dare you say that Capitol Heights is a D neighborhood? Let me tell you why I would call this and classify this as a D neighborhood. Now, you can have A houses in D neighborhoods, okay? But again, 80% of the value, 80% of the value of any single family house comes from the neighborhood where it's located, okay? So why would you, Sherman, why would you dare say that this is a D neighborhood? Well, did we see any dumpsters in the A, B, or C neighborhoods? And no telling how long that dumpster is going to be here, right? But what makes this a quote unquote D neighborhood is 3 things. Number 1, the age of the community itself. Capitol Heights was started before the Euclid versus Ambler real estate decision. Remember I talked about that Ambler versus Euclid Realty, City of Ambler versus Euclid Realty was sort of a landmark Supreme Court case that establishes the principle of zoning and governmental control over land use. And pre-Ambler versus Euclid, if you own a piece of property, you could do what you want on your side. And if your neighbor had a piece of property, they could do what they want on their side, and never the 2 things ever come together. So in these quote unquote D neighborhoods, it's not uncommon to see, you know, houses like this, which is recently renovated, recently rehabbed, you know, right across the street from, you know, like older houses, right? And right across the street from like newer houses. And it's just this whole sort of eclectic nature of what's going on. It's not uncommon to see, you know, what they call pipe stem lots, you know, where, you know, there's a little road and then there's like 4 or 5 houses off the road. You don't see that kind of stuff in A, B, and C quality neighborhoods. Why? Because this neighborhood was established pre-Ambler versus Euclid. It was started pre-zoning, and there is no zoning. It's just sort of like you got a piece of dirt and you can get it approved by the city, you get it approved. In addition to which, you have some incorporated parts of Capitol Heights, which are part of the city of Capitol Heights, and some unincorporated parts that are really more like Upper Marlboro, but they call themselves Capitol Heights. And then finally, there's no HOA, there's no homeowners association, so nobody's coming out here every year and inspecting these houses and saying, hey, you got to clean that up. Hey, you got to move that. Hey, you got to take care of that. It's in a city, but it could be not in a city, and they're still calling it Capitol Heights, and there's no real strong code enforcement. And the age of the houses. Some of these houses in Capitol Heights go back to the 1920s. Now, a lot of them have been bulldozed or just fallen down, but there's a whole bunch of them that were built in the 1940s, 1950s. It's a 70-year-old house, folks. It's a 70-year-old house, and not everybody's fixed their house up a couple times in 70 years. Case in point, you saw the case study on this house. It's got a fence there now, but this house had tires out the gazoo, right? I'm having trouble finding the right words to describe it. And so, you know, can you imagine living across the street or next to a house that's just got tires everywhere? I mean, everywhere. There were hundreds of tires. If you guys remember the videos, there were hundreds of tires, not just a few, right? So that's why it makes it a D neighborhood. And quite frankly, D is for delightful, because this is where you go make some serious money as a wholesaler. You will tend to have more abandoned houses. You will tend to have more houses that are in need of repair. You know, very few houses look like that one across the street, which is probably, you know, that house right there is probably built in maybe the 80s or 90s. I mean, most of these houses were built, like I said, in, you know, pre sort of 1970s, sort of 40s, 50s. This house right here, that house was built in the 1940s. The house across the street, that house was built in the 40s or 50s. And so therefore, you're going to find more opportunity to have houses where they're abandoned houses, houses where it's just totally falling down and the previous owner just really can't keep it up. Probably a higher proportion of foreclosures, probably a higher proportion of pre-foreclosures. But the main thing is this sort of, again, and I'll just be kind and call it eclectic nature of the neighborhood, because there is no homeowners association. There isn't really strong code enforcement. You're just going to have more opportunities to find houses that need some TLC. And that's why investors who like to buy, fix, and flip love these neighborhoods. And that's why investors who want to buy, fix, and hold love these neighborhoods, because they tend to be a little cheaper than the houses that have the HOA running around telling everybody fix up your house, right? And so as a result, this is gold. This is Shangri-La. This is the Gold Coast. This is why most new investors find their start in places like Capitol Heights. And certainly there are parts of Capitol Heights that are older than this, and there are parts of Capitol Heights that are newer than this, but this is what I would call a D neighborhood, and I've given you the reasons why I call it a D neighborhood. And again, you can have really nice houses in a D neighborhood. Now, what about E or F neighborhoods? We don't have them in Washington, D.C. anymore. An E neighborhood, so a D neighborhood is a neighborhood where you have, it's really kind of solid, but you'll see, you know, cars up on blocks, you'll see tires in the neighbor, and then in the backyard of a neighbor's house, and maybe the house is abandoned. And you may have a handful of abandoned houses in the neighborhood. But, you know, certainly more than you find in an A, B, or C neighborhood. Certainly way more than you find in an A, B, or C neighborhood, but not the whole neighborhood. And the difference between a D versus an E in my book is if you drive through a neighborhood and roughly about 1/3 to 1/2 of the houses in the neighborhood are abandoned or neglected or really in, you know, eyesores, that's an E neighborhood. And I'd be a little cautious as a new investor getting started in an E neighborhood. And then an F neighborhood is basically a war zone. Stay the hell out of that. If you actually find one house that's actually been renovated and occupied and everything else is abandoned, that's a war zone. That's an F neighborhood. Stay the heck out, because that's just, it's a foolish endeavor. And tell you what, I'll jump on the computer and show you a little bit more. There's no E or F neighborhoods in the Washington, D.C. region. There are plenty of E and F neighborhoods still left in Baltimore. So maybe next time we head on up to Baltimore, I'll point out some E and F neighborhoods. And I do need to go to Baltimore because I really need to talk about why in Baltimore we don't have the same kind of enforcement, zoning, et cetera. Baltimore is really block by block. And I think the best way to describe it is to actually show it to you. So we'll figure out a way that I'll actually show you how Baltimore is sort of block by block, and where you have whole blocks that are just war zones. Those are F neighborhoods. When you have a whole neighborhood where like half the houses are abandoned and then being repaired, and half the houses in the neighborhood are being fixed up, or were fixed up before somebody gave up, that's an E neighborhood. And I would generally recommend for the new investor, stay out of both. I would recommend for the experienced investor, stay the heck out of the F or the war zone. And maybe only the most experienced investor who's got a lot of clout and got the city behind them could really take on an F neighborhood and get the city to come in and support you. But for the most part, as investors, new investors, this is it, baby. D neighborhoods, C neighborhoods, maybe occasionally an E neighborhood, but this is where you're going to find your pay dirt. This is where you're going to find your gold. Sherman Ragland, Real Investor. Talk soon. Bye.
All right. So tell me what you think. Was that helpful at all? Give me a thumbs up. And I was realizing as I was standing there in the middle of Capitol Heights shooting this video, I really got to go to Baltimore, because Baltimore not only has war zones that you can actually shoot video footage as long as the drug dealers don't catch on to what you're doing and want you to put your camera away. Baltimore really is more of an example of sort of quote unquote block by block. Less so true of DC. And, you know, when you get out into the suburbs, Montgomery County, Prince George's County, most of the suburbs were built, certainly almost all of Northern Virginia was built and developed after the Ambler-Euclid 1926 court case. So as a result, we don't tend to see a lot of the funky stuff like you see in Philadelphia or Chicago or New York or even parts of New Jersey. until you get to Baltimore. Baltimore is sort of its own special thing. Okay. All right. So anybody have any questions about anything I covered? I apologize for the first video. I probably could have done a better job of explaining Ambler versus Euclid. But does anybody have any questions on, my categorization of A, B, C, D, E, F neighborhoods, and why I think that most new investors should start in the D neighborhoods? Again, D meaning the average age of the house is probably 50 plus. There's not a homeowners association. There's not a really strong code enforcement. And for the most part, it's kind of, again, like I said, eclectic. You got some 80s houses and some 50s houses and a sprinkling of 40s houses. And you see things like houses up on car blocks and tires in the backyard, maybe even a couple of abandoned cars in the backyard, or maybe even lots that haven't been built on. And you realize, hey, there's some interesting activity happening here. Those are the neighborhoods that the investors love. And if you're going to be successful as a wholesaler, you want to follow the investors where the investors are. Okay. All right. So what about PPD? What other would you recommend besides pepper spray? A Glock 19 or a Sig Sauer 365? I told you it's another lesson for another day. If you're going much beyond pepper spray, you're probably using a firearm, and that's beyond the scope of this class. But there are some neighborhoods, again, not so much DC area, where you may have to go in there packing. And if you're sitting there going, I don't want to go in there packing, then you don't want to be in that neighborhood. Yeah, a whistle. But quite frankly, a whistle is not going to stop a charging pit bull. A whistle's not going to, but bear spray, and bear spray, by the way, is the next step up before you get to firearm, but bear spray will stop a pit bull in its tracks. A whistle will not stop a pit bull. And trust me, I became a big believer in personal protection devices when I went out jogging one day. This was probably about 5 years ago, and out of nowhere comes this unleashed dog, and he's just all over Bruno, and then he wants to be all over me. And I don't mean he was like wanting to bite us. He was wanting to mate with Bruno, except Bruno's a male and so was he, and that just wasn't, Bruno was not happy that day. And so I had to hit that dog with some pepper spray in the face and the mouth. And quite frankly, I unleashed a whole can of pepper spray, just sort of a jogger style. And he still kept coming. Had it been a pit bull, we wouldn't have had a chance. And so that's when I upgraded to bear spray, because bear spray is a lot more powerful. Where do you get bear? You can get it online, Amazon. And by the way, I actually have a class that I'm teaching. I was trying not to give you guys too much information and overload you, but I do have an hour-and-a-half class that I teach that was approved by the Maryland Real Estate Commission called Personal Protection for Real Estate Professionals. And it's what I say in it is valid for real estate agents as it is for real estate investors. And I go through all of the different kinds of PPD devices, including whistles, tasers, where to get this stuff, what's legal, what's not legal. I don't really cover firearms in the Personal Protection 101 class, because we have a Personal Protection 201, which is just about firearms. And it also allows you to qualify for the Maryland HQL, because in Maryland, you can't go buy a handgun without passing a test and going to a live class. So we have another class, which is called Personal Protection 201, which deals with firearms for anybody who feels like they need some more firepower than bear spray or a taser. And then we have Personal Protection 301, which is really for the person who says, I want to conceal carry. But I'll talk more about that next week. That's beyond the scope of this class. But for this class, if you're going to be going out looking at houses, you better have a cell phone that is fully charged. And I would also recommend a backup battery and letting people know where you are. You ought to at least have as a minimum some pepper spray. A whistle's great. A taser's even better. Bear spray's even best, because you just never know when something or someone's going to come out of the dark recesses of the house and come charging at you. Oftentimes it's four-legged, but every once in a while it might be two-legged, and you need to kind of stop them in their tracks before they do any harm. But that's, again, beyond the scope of this, but I just mentioned it and referenced it that, hey, you need to have something. Most important thing you need to have on you is your wits and being alert and being situationally aware, and having that phone on you so that if something does happen, which, not so nefarious as being attacked, but maybe you just slip and fall and you break something and you got to call an ambulance or you got to call for an emergency medical personnel to help lift you out of that house because you slipped and fell and now you can't get up, just like the commercial says. So, having some kind of personal protection device, having your phone on you, but you're going to have to at some point get out and start looking at houses, looking at neighborhoods. When does that happen for us? It happens for us when our real estate agent, when our diamond coach calls us and said, hey, congratulations, you made highest and best. Now you and your contractor need to get out there and look at these houses and come up with, what your revised cost estimate is for that property and your revised bid for the property. And as I said in the video, I'll say it again, when you go look at a house, you should look at more than just the house. And you should plan accordingly to look at more than just the house. You should drive the neighborhood. You should look the neighborhood. If you feel that it's safe and okay, you should walk the neighborhood. That's also one of the reasons why I take my 70-pound Doberman with me, is we're walking the neighborhood and he's right there by my side. And if you don't have a dog, that's fine. Take a friend, take a child, take somebody other than you. If you can't do that, then just be situationally aware and get to know these neighborhoods. Because 80% of the value of any single family house is the neighborhood. And you really want to know, where does the neighborhood end? Where does it begin? At what point does it start to transition to a different neighborhood with different values? And that can only be learned by getting out and walking neighborhoods or driving neighborhoods. Once you've got it, it doesn't change that much. I really learned Capitol Heights and Lanham Seabrook and Seat Pleasant 20 years ago. Not much has changed. There is some things that have changed. Where I drove by today, they're putting in this brand new beautiful park where it used to be trees, and that's going to help improve the quality of the neighborhood. There's somebody built a whole bunch of brand new townhouse developments about 5-6 years ago. That's going to certainly change the neighborhood. But generally speaking, neighborhoods don't change that much year over year. So once you know it, and that will allow you to really do this investing from anywhere in the world. I mean, the reason why I was able to buy some houses, some townhouses in Capitol Heights 6-7 years ago from a beach chair was because I knew what part of Capitol Heights we were dealing with. And all I needed to do was have my contractor go out and look at the specific property. Well, my contractor can go look at the specific property on his own and show me the video. I don't have to be in the same space with them, but I don't expect my contractor to tell me what part of Capitol Heights and what the values are for that part. I got to know that, right? I got to know that. And the only way to know that is to get out there and start walking these neighborhoods, driving these neighborhoods, getting to know these neighborhoods. All right. Anybody any questions for me? We're going to get out of here a little early today. Send info on, yes, I will be sending everybody information on the 3 personal protection classes. Personal Protection 101 will kick off in February, the first week of February. That will be online. It'll have like a $20 fee, and it has 1.5 hours of CE credit if you happen to have a real estate license. Personal Protection 201 will kick off the second week. That will be taught at a private gun club in Prince George's County, not too far from Bowie State. It's limited to 6 people. So we're going to do that and repeat it. And then 301 will be sometime probably in March. Now, back to this lesson for today. Troy says repair costs. Help me understand what you're asking me, Troy. What specifically do you want to know about repair costs? So we're going to talk about rehab cost estimates later next week. Yes, we will talk about rehab costs the day after tomorrow. Tomorrow is sort of a open office hours session, and you guys can come and ask me anything that we talked about over the past couple of weeks. And then we really dig into, okay, now that we're at highest and best in the contract, and the diamond member calls us or the agent calls us and we're going to go out and meet with the contract, what should we be looking at? What should we be talking about? Now, I'll give you a little hint. If you were paying attention to those video segments and I talked about neighborhood, I talked about age of houses, guess what? If you start focusing on specific neighborhoods, chances are every house in that neighborhood will have about the same repair list of items. They were all built around the same period of time. They all have the same age in terms of HVAC, kitchens, roofs, etc. So if you go out and meet with a contractor and he says, this house, this neighborhood looks like it's going to be about $30,000, pretty much any other house in that neighborhood that needs work is also going to be around $30,000. And so one of the keys to being successful in this business, especially when you first get started, is only focus on a handful of neighborhoods. I would generally say focus on 2 or 3 neighborhoods to start, and focus on 2 or 3 neighborhoods that are close to each other that have housing that was built about the same time. Those investors who decide I'm going to be in Montgomery County on Monday, Baltimore City on Thursday, Prince William County on Friday, and they're all over the place on all different kind of neighborhoods, their rehab numbers are also all over the place. Versus those investors who say, I'm going to be in Capitol Heights on Monday, I'm going to be in Seat Pleasant, which is the next neighborhood over, on Tuesday, and I'm going to be in maybe Marlow Heights, which is sort of Capitol Heights along the Route 4. They're going to be much more successful because once they've gone with a contractor to one property and then another, they kind of know what stuff costs to rehab in that neighborhood because it doesn't change a whole lot. Again, understanding, if you're really understanding what I was showing you in those videos and what I hope to convey in the videos, those houses were all built around the same period of time. Those houses are all about the same square footage. Those houses are going to need about the same repair estimate in that neighborhood. And it's only when you start to go outside the neighborhood that you now have to worry about, well, gee, what about, you know, these houses and these houses and these houses, okay? So we're taking this one step at a time. I don't want to overload you, but I do want to make sure that we keep pace. Yesterday's lesson was about the contract. Today's lesson was about Mayo and neighborhood. And then the third part of the puzzle, right? Going back to that Mayo formula. Let me take us back to that Mayo formula, right? Mayo formula equals the fair market value, or the FMARV, times the number given to us by the hard money lender minus repair costs. Now, what did we cover today? This part of the formula. Because 80% of the value was what? Neighborhood. 80% of the value of the house comes from the neighborhood. So if you have downloaded your multiple listing, your MLS app, and now start to focus on a specific neighborhood, you're going to see housing values that are within a certain range. And the $500,000 neighborhood is going to have values that are $485 to $525. You're not going to find a $600,000 house in a $500,000 neighborhood, okay? Those houses that are in the $300,000 neighborhood, houses are going to be $280 to $325. Those houses that are in the upper twos, because we're quickly running out of neighborhoods in Prince George's County that I could say 200,000, and there is no longer 100,000. In the upper twos, it's going to be 250 to 310, right? We want to now start building on the tools I've given you to start zeroing in on specific neighborhoods and seeing if you can determine what you think the fair market after repair value is. Then multiply that by 0.75 and then subtract your repair costs. The day after tomorrow, we'll cover repair costs, how to do that estimate, especially when you haven't even visited the property yet. That will allow you to take what you learned yesterday and start writing up the offers. So tomorrow, open office hours, chance to ask me anything about anything we've covered over the past couple of weeks. If there's anything that's still unclear, that's where we want to ask it. I may tell you to go back and watch another segment from a previous lesson, or you may say to me, hey, I've already watched it 3 times and I'm still not getting it, and we'll break it down and talk about it, okay? Day after tomorrow, we'll talk about repair costs, and then we'll pull it all together by me giving you the cost estimating sheet for making your offers. Okay, that's what we'll go out over the day after tomorrow. And then after we got that down, we'll start putting offers out the door. Those of you who've already engaged me, engaged us, and then we'll start talking about putting that on autopilot, and that'll finish out next week. Okay? Any questions on any of that? All right. Rebecca says, what was the name of the site you were viewing on the laptop? Oh, that is realinvestorsmobilemls.com. So you go to realinvestorsmobilemls.com. It will take you to the specific page to register the HomeSnap app, and that's what it looks like when it looks like on my iPad. which is slightly different than what it looks like on my iPhone. I suggest you have it on both. Have it on both. You can have it, and look, you can have it on your desktop, but chances are if you have a desktop computer, you're not putting that in your car and you're not going to have that in the field when you need it. But you're probably going to have your phone and you may have your iPad. And if you don't have one, you probably have the other. So I say download the app on both. And you want to go to that specific page, which is found at Real Investors Mobile MLS, which is my landing page that tells HomeSnap, which is the tool that we use, that you are getting that access through me, which means everywhere that I have access, you have access. So that's Maryland, DC, Virginia. If you just go to HomeSnap without directly homesnap.com, then HomeSnap is not going to allow you to start searching stuff until you tell HomeSnap which agent you're working with. But if you go to my landing page, it knows you're working with me, and it'll give you access to everything that's in the region. Okay. What would I recommend for those of us who have a real estate license? It's okay to work with, like, you can have a license and not actually use it on your own transactions. I did that when I first got started. Main reason I did it when I first got started was I was still a little uncomfortable with my negotiating skills talking to a listing agent, especially the REO agents. And I would much rather have sort of been behind the scenes, sort of letting my agent be on the front line, and I'm sort of like behind the scenes. And then as time got on and I realized, okay, you know, I know more than I'm giving myself credit for, then I'll go ahead and, you know, make those conversations. But truthfully, to be total honest, total disclosure with you guys, I don't negotiate a lot of deals. Most deals that I do today are brought to me by bird dogs and wholesalers. I'd rather kind of just teach you how to do the business by turning you into a wholesaler and have you bring me a deal. And as we go along, advise you, guide you, and it's a win-win. Because now you're learning some techniques you didn't have, and I don't have to work as hard. I'm just being honest. I'm telling you like it is. You know, I value my time. I like not having to get up and work, start at 30 till 5:30 the Freckles cow. You know, I'm just saying. All right. Any other questions before we get out of here? Yeah, you have it on. Yeah, it does look different on the iPad than it does on the iPhone. Again, main thing is just put it on both. All right. So we do have a case study, but I want to give you your homework before we get out of here. So here's your homework. All right, so let me go ahead and show screen, and I'm gonna show homework, and then I'm gonna show case study, and then we're gonna get out of here. All right, homework. Please download that buyer broker exclusive agreement. If you want Real Investors to appoint somebody to work with you, please start going through the MAR contract. Now that you know neighborhood, now that you know which neighborhood, open up your apps, go to Capitol Heights, go to other D quality neighborhoods that are kind of near Capitol Heights, like, you know, Lanham, Seabrook, you know, for the same kind of reasons. You know, you got a fair number of older properties that need some TLC, and you don't have a very strong HOA, and you don't have very strong code enforcement. So Lanham, Seabrook, Capitol Heights, various parts of the area that's classified as Hyattsville, especially sort of inside the Beltway, any of the cottage towns inside the Beltway, Berwyn Heights, stuff along the Route 1 corridor, I guess it's called Baltimore Avenue now. Those are great neighborhoods, or great areas that have great neighborhoods within them to find investor deals. So go ahead and find those on your Real Investors mobile MLS and start practicing writing up offers as best you can. Now, obviously, the one thing that's going to be missing to do that is your rehab costs. So let's just use $50,000. And then I'll show you how to refine that number. But for the purpose of just getting it done, and going through the exercise of just use $50,000 for your rehab costs, and then write up one offer that you feel good about, and upload that contract into the day 13 homework. I'm sorry, it does say day 12, doesn't it? Duh. So I get for copying slides over day 13, because day 13 was very similar to day 12. All right, so do upload it into the day 13 homework, and you don't have to upload all the pages. Just upload the pages that you wrote on. If it's boilerplate language and it all looks the same, you know, I don't even see it. So there's really only going to be about 4 or 5 pages you're going to upload, right? The first page and the signature page, and like one other, like, and the page that has like item 7. You know, I want to see that all. I want to see that as is content. I want to see you write that out, right? So there's probably about 3, maybe 4 pages that you're going to write on. Those are the pages I want to see, not all 12 pages. Okay. And that's it. I mean, that's your homework. Like, just start getting in the groove of practicing of like, this is how we're going to do it. And the more you do it, the more comfortable it becomes. The more you do it, you're no longer getting outside your comfort zone. The more you do it, the more it just becomes sort of second nature. That's my end goal. Okay. All right. Any questions on that? Ask them in the chat box. I will make sure that there's a place for you to upload your homework later on today. Okay. When I get through with you guys, that'll be the first thing I do. All right. So we do have a question in the chat. And the question is, which 4 pages again? You have to figure that out. It's the 4 pages you have to write something on. I'm not going to go back right now and tell you specifically what page number it is. We know it's the first page. We know it's the last page, and there's 2 others in between. You got to go figure that out. Okay, no worries, no harm, no foul. Location on Route 1. What, I'm not sure what you're asking me, Robert. What do you mean by location on Route 1? You can be a little more specific. I can answer. D says, see, D's cheating. She's telling everybody the answer. All right, areas to look for deals. To me, Capitol Heights is where I started 20 plus years ago. And I was back there today and it's like, you know what? There's still deals in Capitol Heights. So Capitol Heights, Lanham, Seabrook, the areas along Route 1, not too far from College Park. They're generally labeled as Hyattsville, right? And there's different parts of Hyattsville. Hyattsville in Prince George's County is like Ellicott City in Howard County. It's just sort of this meandering thing, right? But there are some little pockets here and there that are worth looking at, okay? But the key is just pick one neighborhood, see if you can find any deal activity coming off of the mobile MLS, and then begin to look at neighborhoods that are close in next to it, because that's really the way you're going to build your business, okay? Getting to learn one and then another and then another, and before you know it, after about a month or two, you know 4 or 5 neighborhoods like the back of your hand. Howard Johnson says it over and over again. His bread and butter neighborhood is Palmer Park. I don't like Palmer Park. Maybe that's why I'm not telling you to go to Palmer Park, but he loves Palmer Park and he's made a lot of money in Palmer Park. The reason I don't like Palmer Park, quite frankly, is because a lot of the houses in Palmer Park are duplexes. And one of the things I don't like about duplexes is you can fix your house all the way up to the high hill, and your next door neighbor, which looks like it's the exact same house, looks like half a house, can let it look like hell, and there's nothing you can do about it. So that's why I don't personally like Palmer Park. But Howard's made a lot of money in Palmer Park over the years. So I like Capitol Heights. I like Lanham Seabrook. I love Lanham Seabrook. It's got many of the same characteristics of Capitol Heights, but it's a notch higher. But again, the key is to get to know these neighborhoods, and then you can decide, this is a good neighborhood for me. I'm making a lot of money as a wholesaler in this neighborhood, making a few bucks as a rehabber, making a couple bucks buying and holding. For me, buy hold right now, 20772 Upper Marlboro. Love it. Love it. Love me some 20772. But you guys go discover what you think are neighborhoods, and just go through the exercise of filling out the contract and upload those pages into the Facebook page. Okay. All right. Let me go ahead and show this case study. And then any other questions from here on out, either ask me tomorrow during open office hours or ask me online in Facebook. Okay. So we can get out of here. I'm trying to make these things less than 2.5 hours, but y'all just keep on pushing me. But that's okay. Most important thing is you guys are getting the lessons. And if we go an extra half an hour, so be it. I'd rather go an extra half an hour and have everybody going, I think I got it, than cut it short and y'all be like, what did he say? You know, we go as long as we need to get the lesson across. All right, here's case study. I'll meet you guys tomorrow at 7 for open office hours. I'll meet you guys in the Facebook group. But let me show this case study and then we're gonna get out of here, and I'll see you guys tomorrow and I'll answer questions in Facebook, okay? All right, here we go.
Residing in Crofton, Maryland, and I have been with the Realinvestors family for about 5 years. Hardison, Germantown, Maryland. I've been with Realinvestors for 5 months. The Realinvestors 21-day course has been absolutely the foundation for standing here today. I didn't do it in 21 days by choice. Because I have other priorities. But I managed to go to I learned on one day course and working with the incubator team has been invaluable to getting this property came to our attention from the incubator. The incubator and what they do on a daily basis, go out and search the MLS for deals. And they found this one. This was a short sale. This was a short sale that they found. It was brought to my attention through Sherman. It looked like a good deal to me, and so I wanted to be a part of it. And I kept bugging Sherman about letting me get in on this deal. And finally, he said, okay. So I had the contract assigned to me, trying to learn how to fund the deal. I found out that I needed some help. And so I went on and found Kevin.
Carl and I actually met. There was a property tour of this property once. Property was up for, like Carl said, it was kind of up for bid. It was, the incubator had it under contract. I liked the property and wanted to be a part of it somehow. However, with my situation, my wife and I, my family, moving to a new house. And so I was not in the current position to have another property affecting my credit during the time of my family acquiring our property. And Carl said he wanted the property, but he also came to me and said, hey, I would like for you to be a part of this if you can. So we kind of talked about it. We worked the numbers out, and I was able to contribute financially as well as with my experience. And we were able to partner and, like Carl said, go out and seek funding, which that in itself was a lot of fun.
You say that jokingly, but it was challenging. We went out looking for funding, and initially it wasn't very difficult to find people who would lend money. The deal was good, so lenders didn't have a problem with the deal. But right in the middle of our search for funding, the chaos with the coronavirus hit. And all lending came to a halt. So here we are with a deal under contract and no funding. So that was a little bit of a scary moment for me, especially being a new investor. Kevin probably handled it a lot better.
It was the same. I mean, this coronavirus and all of the changes. Now, I was going through the same thing with my other house. So I was a little bit familiar with what was going to happen. The rates changed with my property, with my family, just as with this property. But I was able to get that close. So I did have some confidence that we would find a lender. But, in the back of my head, just from my experience with dealing with hard money lenders, I just knew that the terms which were originally quoted to Carl were going to change by the end. And whether it be based on the coronavirus or in general, I just have personally found that hard money lenders, their numbers are going to stay pretty consistent to what the market is, regardless of what they originally quote. But that didn't stop Carl, and that was the case, but that didn't stop Carl, because Carl, he saw the numbers, he saw the way that he and I was going to make money on this deal, and finance numbers came. What was amazing for me to see is, he flinched like this, and he was just like, oh, that's it? Okay, so, what's the next step? He was prepared. And what I have learned in my 5 years of real estate investing, contrary to whatever is stated in the marketplace, you have to have money. It takes money to make money. Now, whether it's not your money or it is your money, that's a different story. But, Carl had a situation together where he was prepared to do a deal. And I was prepared to help where I could. So it worked out.
Yeah, it's a great partnership. So, as you can imagine, we had to take a step back and say, can we still do this? And based on the numbers in the deal, it was like a no-brainer. Yeah, we're going to do it.
The good thing about this deal is it allows for several different strategies. So that's another reason why we press forward on this. Yeah. Would you say our primary is to look at the assisted living option?
I think that's the primary.
That's the primary?
Because that's the greatest return.
Right. So one of the ideas, and Sherman really helped us visualize this. If you're looking at this in a Texas assisted living space, it's a little tight for a common area of 7 or 8 people. So the reason why we really like this is this garage has been closed in, and the idea is to open this wall, build the subfloor, and build the flooring in. The vents are already in this room, and the electricity and the outlets. So insulation would have to be blown into the walls, and that wall would be open. But this would become the common area, which would give this a lot more appeal. Now, if we were to just renovate this and put this back on the market, and the current value, the appraiser, which I walked it with the appraiser, Carl provided me a scope of work that he had worked with the contractor, and I was able to meet the appraiser out and explain like what we were looking to do with it. And based on that valuation, this property would be worth about $390. Now, we bought this property for $243, and we're looking to do right around $50,000 worth of renovation. So as you can see, there's a spread in there. So there's money to be made. Again, we're considering fixing this up as an assisted living and leasing this to an operator. Then there's a full basement downstairs with a renovated bathroom, a gaming area, which an operator could actually live down there. You know, it's a full basement, so you know, there's plenty of room in this house.
You can flip it, you can bring it out, you can do a special niche rental.
Yeah.
The numbers are such that you can pretty much decide on how much you want to do.
And when did we start? February or January? January. And now we're almost at the end of May, and we closed on May the 15th. So we're looking at least 4 months.
If you come out to a real investors meeting and you heard about the 21-day course, and you're on the fence about whether you should do it or not, don't even think about it. Get the 21-day course, dig in. It's a lot of information, and you're not going to understand it all at first. But if you just keep grinding at it and ask questions, because there's plenty of support around you, just ask questions when you have questions, and you follow the 21-day course, you will be successful, and you will end up with a deal.
This is Kevin Rory out of Crofton, Maryland. I just made $35,000 on a rehab.
My name is Carl Hardison. I'm from Germantown, Maryland. I just made $35,000 on a rehab project. We're real investors, and we get real checks.
All right, so couple things. I'm gonna have to have that audio re-edited and have my guy redo it. But one of the things that the cameraman didn't show and Carl and Kevin didn't talk about. Carl, Kevin, you guys here? Are you guys here? Carl, Kevin? I know Carl's usually here right up front. I'm not seeing Carl. I'm not seeing Kevin either. One of the things that the videographer, oh, there's Carl. Carl's muted. He's hiding. All right, you can hide, Carl. It's fine.
I'm here, Sherman. Sorry.
So one of the things that you guys didn't talk about, and one of the things that the videographer didn't show, was what was happening across the street. You want to tell everybody what's happening across the street from that property?
Yeah, across the street, a recently brand new house had been built, and The ARV on that house was like $550,000.
Yeah. And next to that house, what happened? Didn't somebody build a brand new house right next to that house a few years ago?
Yeah, so the one straight across had been rehabbed, and the one to the right of it, yes, a brand new house built.
Yeah. So the point being is that that neighborhood has become so valuable that builders are coming into the neighborhood and tearing down houses like Carl's house and replacing them with $500,000, $600,000 houses.
Yes.
And that can happen too, where a neighborhood can change because its proximity to work, its proximity to a city, the desire for people to have bigger houses. And so one of the things, unfortunately, that was not captured in the video, and I was surprised because I thought you, Carl, you and Kevin had talked about, but the whole neighborhood is changing where newer houses are replacing the older houses, and the newer houses are going for $600,000. And you guys paid what for that house? 240?
243.
243. All right.
We did okay.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Yep.
So in any event, guys, tomorrow we will have open office hours. You can come and ask me anything you want, and that'll be at 7. And again, your homework for tonight or tomorrow morning, if you want to take it on tomorrow, is just get out that contract and to the best of your ability, fill out the contract and upload those pages that are the pages that you write on. I just want to see how you're coming along in terms of writing up offers. All right, on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being Sherman, it was not your best, 5 being okay, all right, I'm hanging with you. All right, so tomorrow's we'll take a little break, let you guys get caught up. Ooh, a 7. Go ahead, Frank. Go ahead, my man. Tomorrow we'll just kind of catch up, have office hours, and then the day after tomorrow we'll actually tackle contractor estimates and going after the deal analysis worksheet so that you can streamline the writing up of your offers and ultimately hand over the writing of your offers to somebody else. And then the rest of the week we'll talk about automation and how to put this thing on autopilot. Okay. Thank you guys. Appreciate you. See you tomorrow at 7 o'clock. All right.